Good.
All right, we're live.
Cool.
Now, you guys that have tuned in early, as I always do on these, is I'm going to pull out my phone and let you guys let me know if the audio levels sound good. One day I'm going to have like trolls that are going to be like, oh yeah, it's great, and it's like nothing.
Nobody can hear anything. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
just no audio going out at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, well, that's nice. That'll help.
Oh yeah, the air just kicked on. Yeah.
Broadcasting live from the
Yeah.
Starship.
All right. This is going to be the whole podcast, just us on our phones. That's like
Reality TV at its finest, folks. That's what the world's come to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We already have a dislike.
Of course we do.
Okay. Let me know. It sounds good. All right. You guys can hear us. All right. We're good to go.
All right. Great. Awesome.
So I brought Will here again to, we're going to talk about, we're going to have kind of a topic specific podcast to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, if it stays on topic.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Probably it won't.
Quasi-scientific
Yeah.
analysis of some stuff that keeps floating around the internet that we decided would be, fun to take on.
Yeah.
So
like maybe the moon landing.
the moon landing, possibly get into a little bit of that,
Moon landing.
flat Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moon landing question mark.
Yeah. Did it happen? Yeah, no.
The moon landing?
I don't know. I have people I know that don't believe the moon landing happened. It's kind of disturbing. So I thought it'd be fun to get on here and just,
Yeah. And I'm kind of in the middle on that.
Yeah.
So like I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I just like I'm kind of like I don't maybe you'll convince me.
Well, let's hope so.
But-
it'd be nice if I can't convince someone who's in the middle, then I'm not gonna have any. No, it's fake. I'm not gonna have any effect on that guy.
Yeah.
So if hopefully I can bring you over to the NASA side of the house and be like, no, totally, it had to have happened.
I will say before you get started on your evidence.
Yeah.
I will say that like with a lot of conspiracy theories, they come about because there's discrepancies that people notice.
Yeah.
And I tend to think, in some cases, maybe it is a real conspiracy, but I would think that in almost all of the cases, there's some reason for those discrepancies that's based on some reality. Like maybe now some of them could just be an accident or something like that, obviously, or there's some kind of like super logical explanation for it. I don't necessarily mean that. I mean like maybe there is something that the government lied about. It could have been a small thing, but something they lied about that kind of created some of these discrepancies.
I will say one thing, that they actually did some studies a while back. Did you want to go ahead and do the other part of this before we get going?
Which part?
The part where you talk about the folks.
Oh yeah. I gotta remember to do that on the live ones.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to get paid for doing this, that's fine. I just thought I'd remind you before we got too far into it.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem.
But
Greedy capitalist over here, just
Yeah,
looking
I
out for
know.
you, bro.
Because then I have to like take the show back down and put it back on
Yeah.
there. But yeah, so of course SDI is an organization that helps out this show. They do they're basically like a fully accredited online gunsmithing college. So you can like so if you want to become a gunsmith, you can do it through it's like a distance learning program basically, and they like
Nice.
basically they like send you a packet of stuff, so it's not like only online, like you're actually doing real like physical work and stuff and learning how to
That's
be a
kinda
gunsmith.
awesome.
And they do like GI Bill and all that kind of stuff. Don't feel like you have to be impressed by it.
No, dude. I mean, it's one of those things like gunsmithing's like swordsmithing and
Yeah.
blacksmithing. It's one of those things that I've always been completely intrigued by, but entirely too like unambitious and lazy to get into.
Yeah,
But no,
I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Like I love guns. I grew up with them, but I've never just I don't know. I don't think I have quite the mind for like tedious kind of work. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what gunsmithing is.
And no, it's kind of like physics. There's a lot of tedium involved.
Yeah.
Sounds sexy and flashy on the surface, but when you get down in there, you're just like, oh my god, it's a spreadsheet. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At a certain point, it's pretty tedious. But if that's something people want to do,
No, I mean it's not.
You know.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, but it's out there.
Yeah.
What does SDI stand for, if you don't mind me asking?
Sonoran Desert Institute.
Thank you. I had no idea. I was like South Dakota Institute. Like
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out Southern Desert. What's the SD?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they're out in the Phoenix area, but you can learn with them. Is that the proper word? From anywhere.
okay,
So,
nice.
and then of course Federal, they supply all of our ammo. We used to have to buy all of our own ammo for
That
the
had to get
videos.
pricey.
Yeah, it did. I mean, it was like it was is the biggest part of the budget. You know,
yeah, I can
doing our
imagine.
show,
Yeah. You're not reclaiming that. It's not like, you know,
Yeah.
you buy a gun for the show. You're like, oh, no, I got a gun now. You buy the ammo. You're like, ooh, look at all the pretty brass. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A bunch of holes in paper and brass on the ground. And a lot of fun for, you know, however long you were shooting. But that's all
Right.
you usually got to show for it.
Just
You know,
about, yeah.
as far as physical evidence that you spent the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at Federal SDI, you know, appreciate them.
Cool. Okay, so back to conspiracy theorists. You know, everybody. The thing about conspiracy theorists is they're not usually idiots. That's the thing. Like everybody's like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Only idiots believe that.
Well, you have to be willing to be able to think outside the box at least a little bit.
Well, what happens is people see things and they see patterns, and a lot of people that are conspiracy theorists are actually really intelligent people, and so they see patterns sometimes that aren't exactly there. But to them, they've made these links and they've made these conclusions, and so they stick. And then there's a lot of people that just run around basically believing whatever they're told, and they're the ones that think conspiracy theorists are idiots. But most of the time, they're just people who have noticed patterns that other people haven't noticed, and they think they've seen things and found things based on these patterns. And it doesn't make them idiots. It just makes them, you know, maybe a flaw in the reasoning somewhere, or maybe not completely understanding all the physics behind it.
They're not always wrong necessarily.
No, they're not always wrong. I mean, there's been a myriad of conspiracy theories that have turned out to be 100% true. I mean, you look at, what was it, Enemy of the State, that had Will Smith.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the other guy's name that was in it.
Gene Hackman?
Gene Hackman,
Yeah.
thank you. And at the time, that was like massive conspiracy theory stuff, and then Snowden came along, and it was like, oh, guess that's not really a conspiracy theory, is it? You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's been stuff like that that's come out. None of them come to mind right now, but I think that I was watching something a while back, or reading something a while back online. It was like 10 crazy conspiracy theories that actually turned out to be true. And so, I mean, sometimes
I think I've seen that video actually. One thing too, I think, because this is used to like write off a lot of conspiracy theories, but there's also like an emotional attachment with knowing something that like not everyone knows.
Well, it's funny that you should bring that up, because my fiance was recently reading a book that I'm actually about to grab and start reading. It's called Persuasion. It's by a man named Cialdini. He actually did another book called Persuasion. Really cool dude. Like, if you want to know how to argue and like debate and actually get people to come over to your side of thinking, Cialdini is the guy you want to listen to. But he talks about the concept of scarcity. And things that are scarce are more valuable.
Right.
And so if you have an understanding of something or a belief of something, or, you know, you've found something no one else has, that becomes incredibly valuable to you, because it actually, even though it doesn't have any monetary value, the intrinsic value that it has to you, because it is a scarce opinion, not everybody shares it, you know, things like that, that actually makes it more valuable and make you cling to it.
Yeah.
You know, and so there is actually something to be said for having an opinion no one else has, because that scarcity value kind of kicks in, and you'll defend it because of its value to you, especially if it's an opinion that you've come up with, you know, something that you've deduced on your own. And so it's interesting, you know, to see, and there's some stuff in the moon landing things that you look at, and on first blush you're like, dude, that is weird, you know.
Yeah.
How does that even work? I think it's kind of, what's the term? Cynical? Yeah. I think it's kind of cynical to say that, you know, NASA, one of the big ones I've heard is that NASA spent all that money, you know, on this, you know, on graphics programs, you know, to make it look like all of these things were going on. I mean, it's not like, I mean, you're basically telling me that NASA invented Adobe. You know, it's like they didn't have enough money to go to the moon, but they designed these supercomputers that they could run, you know, Photoshop 0.01 on, and that's how they designed all these. And it's just, you know, and that's why I think a lot of the moon landing hoax stuff ties in with the flat Earth stuff, ties in with all this other stuff, because it all has to kind of feed off of each other, you know. Yeah,
and then it gets based on kind of a general idea that NASA is like just lying about everything and manufacturing all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help NASA's case with some of the stuff that they have done. That's demonstrably, you're just like, no, that's not really how that works. In the last, you know, decade or so, within, you know, the sphere that we live in. But as far as all the space stuff, I mean, you look at NASA. I mean, they're dealing with this EM drive thing now, that no one really knows how it works, but it does work. And to NASA's credit, they're just like, nope, looks like it works. We've got no clue how. It violates, you know, conservation of momentum, which nothing should, which is an interesting problem. You know what I mean? Like, that's one of the holy grails. Like, we don't touch conservation of momentum. Like, that's, Isaac figured that out back in the 1700s. So that's just been a thing.
And that it's an EM drive. That's the thing that they're talking about that they can get us to Mars with, right?
Yeah, like conceivably could get a ship to Mars in 10 days.
Yeah.
Like you could get to Mars quicker than the Titanic was supposed to make it to America.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm so stoked about the EM drive. I'm fingers so tightly crossed. As someone who has a degree in physics and love physics, whenever something breaks our understanding of physics, dude, I get just giddy. Because that means that there's a new age of discovery coming. Like if we
opens new doors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that you can. That's and then I think on the other side of the spectrum from the conspiracy theorists, that's the problem I have with these dyed-in-the-wool skeptics, is they literally have no. I don't know. I hate to say it, but it's like they have no passion for anything.
It's like they're skeptical up into like the first layer, and then that's it. They decided. That's what's weird. Is like they pride themselves on being these ultimate skeptics. Like, oh, you're just a sheep if you believe the moon landing. Like that was obviously fake.
Yeah.
And then they're not skeptical about that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, it's. I was reading a thing today. I commented on it online because that's what I do on Sunday mornings. I waste an hour and a half on Facebook on my phone. It is. Oh God, dude, it's so easy. Like, I'm just going to check my notifications, and then you're like, that man's an idiot. I have to fix this.
Yeah. But
this physicist Brian Cox in the UK came out, and I'm about to give some of my crazy beliefs away, I guess. But he came out and said, if there was some particle of information that carried our consciousness after death, we would have found it already with the Large Hadron Collider. And I'm like, man, that's what? Okay, I need to go back and read this whole interview because that literally makes no sense for a physicist to say that unless he's just being completely, utterly skeptical. Because to be honest with you, man, we don't know what makes gravity work at this point. Like, we know it does. We got equations that govern it, and they got us to the moon.
Yeah. So I thought it was heavy stuff.
What do you mean?
I'm just kidding. That's a bad joke.
Actually, what, gravity? Well, that's what makes things heavy is gravity. That's how gravity does. Anyway, but we haven't found a graviton. That's the theoretical particle that should convey gravity. We don't know if loop quantum gravity is correct, or if it is a graviton, or whatever it is out there that actually makes us stick to the surface of the Earth. We know it does. We've got an equation that works, and we can use gravitometers to actually to actually measure the gravity at different distances from the Earth. That shows that it falls off at 1 over the radius squared. But as far as the particle that makes gravity, we haven't found that yet.
Here's a question that made me think of. What is so I get the difference between centrifugal force and gravity, where centrifugal force is something spinning.
It's centripetal, but yeah.
It's centripetal?
Yeah, centrifugal force isn't a thing. That's the thing. Centrifugal force is actually a fictional force. Okay. Centrifugal force, okay, so this will actually kind of play into the flat Earth thing because it's one of the things that flat earthers use. So centrifugal force, which is actually a fictional force, is part of a reference frame issue. And I'll explain what that means. And this will kind of prep for the rest of the show when I start talking about reference frames.
Okay, so centrifugal is like the bucket thing.
Right, but that's actually centripetal force.
Centripetal, all right.
Okay.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's and most people, it's centripetal force is because, so let's see if I can do this without getting way too deep into physics. Force equals mass times acceleration. Okay. So mass, we'll do it with watch as my brain shuts down. The opposite of imperial units, metric. Thank you. We'll do it with metric units. So force equals mass times acceleration. Mass being in kilograms, acceleration being in meters per second squared. So meters per second per second.
Okay.
When you multiply kilograms times meters per second, you get a force. Force, as we were talking about earlier with Isaac, is measured in newtons. Funny side note: if you get weighed in Europe, they'll actually tell you your mass, not your weight. So
I've heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So people say that a pound is 2.2 kilograms. Those two units don't actually match up. A kilogram is actually a unit of mass. What you should actually be comparing are pounds and newtons. Those are units of force. Oddly enough, in the imperial system, which we use here in the U.S. and they're still fighting to use in the U.K., what actually matches up to kilograms is a unit of measure called slugs.
Oh.
Yeah, doesn't that sound amazing?
Yeah, really.
So basically, if you take your weight and divide it by 32 feet per second, that'll tell you how many slugs your mass actually is.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty disgusting.
Yeah, but easier to lose weight, I feel like.
Exactly. I've lost 5 slugs, and I'm going to lose 20 more because nobody wants a bunch of slugs walking around. But anyway, so force equals mass times acceleration. Well, acceleration is one of two things. So acceleration is what we call a vector unit, which means it has both a mass and a direction. Okay. Or, I'm sorry, both a value and a direction. Sorry.
Okay. I was going to say, that's pretty intense.
So both a value and a direction. So speed by itself is just how fast you're going. When you add the direction you're going to it, you get velocity.
Okay.
Does that make so far so good? That's why you can have when you get into physics, you don't really decelerate. You just have a negative velocity.
Okay.
Because you're slowing, or a negative acceleration. You're slowing down. You're reducing your velocity. So anyway, centripetal force results from not a change in speed, but a change in direction. So when you're spinning the bucket,
right?
Okay. What's happening? So now we're going to go into Newton's laws of motion. An object at rest tends to stay at rest. An object in motion tends to stay in motion unless acted on upon an outside force. Okay. Well, not only does that object tend to stay in motion, that object tends to stay in motion in the direction in which it is moving. So basically, if we put a ball on the floor and I smack the ball and nothing else acts on the ball, it's going to roll in a straight line.
Right.
Okay. So what happens when you're getting centripetal force is the water in the bucket is trying to go straight.
Okay.
You with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So the water in the bucket is trying to go straight. The bucket and the cord in your hand are restraining that water.
Okay.
And causing the water to change direction.
Okay.
Yeah. So any change in velocity is considered acceleration.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're not changing the speed. Well, you probably are, because that's probably not a constant speed when you're doing this. But what you're actually changing is direction. And so by changing direction, you're actually getting an acceleration.
So it's like everywhere it's trying to go, you're just basically blocking.
You're
basically way.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so you're actually getting an acceleration. And as we know, whenever you have an acceleration, you get force.
Right.
Okay. And so that acceleration is actually acting as a force and holding that water in place.
Okay.
And most people think if they let go of it, it'll fly out in a straight line from wherever they let it go. And it actually won't. It'll fly. So if it's doing this number, most people think if they let go of it, it's going to go off. So like if I'm spinning something this way and I let go of it, most people think that it flies off in a straight line away from me. It doesn't. Not from the direction you think. It actually will keep going the direction it was going at the moment you let it go. So it'll actually fly off that way.
Yeah.
If I let something go here, it won't fly that way. It'll fly that way because that's the last direction it was going before I let it go. So the change in acceleration that creates the force isn't a change in speed. It's a change in direction.
So it's like those Jawas in Return of the Jedi.
Exactly.
They didn't understand that.
Exactly. Or
some of them did.
A couple. Well, they understood it after a while.
Yeah.
They got a real quick lesson in physics.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's centripetal force. Now, centrifugal force is what most people think they experience, and that actually happens when you're inside the moving reference frame. And when I say the moving reference frame, a reference frame would be, so I'm standing here spinning this thing. I'm technically what we would call the stationary reference frame. I'm the observer. I'm watching it spin. The water is in the moving reference frame. So in its view, it's actually being pulled back into the bucket. Yeah. But what's actually happening is the bucket is pushing down on it, and so with equal force. And so it's not really. It's because of the reference frame that the water's in. That's why when you lift out your laundry, it's all stuck to the side of the drum. Right. Is because to the laundry, it's being spun in a circle and pulled back. To us, it's actually trying to go forward. It's trying to go in 300, for lack of a better term, 360 different directions, at every time being corrected slightly. Okay. So in physics, we refer to that as centripetal force. It's the force that holds the thing to go in the circle while the outward force pushes back against it. Okay. And the outward force is created solely and completely by the change in velocity, by changing the direction slightly.
Okay. That's a lot, but I think I understand.
Okay, it kind of is. Hyperphysics is a great website to understand that a little more. I tried to. It's kind of hard to do classical Newtonian mechanics without some sort of visual aid. But but
that's interesting. So I was going to ask is like, now that you explained that, I'm thinking probably the answer is no. But I was going to say, is there much of a relationship between that? Like centripetal force and gravity is like, I realize they come from a different place, but is the actual force at the end of the day kind of similar? Or
no. It's actually it would actually be two. It's It's kind of hard to say. I guess if you saw gravity as the force pulling us towards the center of the Earth, then yes, because if we're on a round ball spinning, then gravity is what's holding us. So it's akin to the string that's holding the bucket.
Okay.
But it's holding us at a much higher rate, at a much greater force than the spin of the Earth is trying to lift us up.
Yeah.
Does that make, or just trying to throw us off? Not lift us up, but trying to throw us off, so you don't fly off into space, because gravity is greater than the spin than the Earth spinning. That makes sense. What we would experience as centrifugal force, because we're on the outside. We're on the spinning thing. We're in the moving reference frame. So to us, it's centrifugal force. Someone standing on the moon would see it as centripetal force. It's a reference frame issue more so than anything. But that's why they refer to centrifugal force as a fictional force, because it doesn't really exist. Centrifugal force would be the thing pushing you out. Centripetal force is the thing that holds you there.
Okay. Makes
so
sense.
when you go around, best way to say it, you go around you curve in a car. Okay, and you get pushed up against the door.
Yeah.
The centripetal force is the force of you and that door pushing back against each other.
Okay.
It's the thing that holds you in the trajectory that the car is going.
And that's what the flat Earth theory is based on, right? Something to do with the way that it's spinning, or
no? See, that's the thing with flat Earth, man.
It's confusing.
It's beyond confusing, because one of the things that I've read recently, and maybe there's some flat earthers on here that'll comment and set me straight, because I'm not a flat earther, and so I go to watch these things, and I literally
if it's flat though, we're all flat earthers.
Yeah, exactly. There's flat earthers all around the globe. But it just, the thing that kills me with flat Earth is talking about gravity. Like the mass, the way gravity works just doesn't work with a flat Earth scenario. It just simply cannot. And so we would have to literally, this gets into some stuff that we'll discuss later with what's called the Einstein equivalency principle, which states that it's impossible to tell the difference between a uniform magnetic field and a uniformly accelerating reference frame. So if you're in a rocket in the middle of space, have you seen, we'll use this, have you seen The Expanse?
No, I haven't.
Oh, dude. I hate to put a shameless plug out for a cable station, but
it's on Sci-Fi, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That show is amazing.
Is it on anything on demand, do you know? Like Netflix or Amazon? Or?
I think the first season's on Netflix.
Netflix, okay.
And I think you can buy it per episode on Amazon. Okay. Or you can buy like a season pass for like $25 or something like that.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's not bad. But dude, the story is fantastic. The physics is actually, I'm watching it like, dude, I'm actually impressed with that. They got that right.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, but one of the things that they make use of in The Expanse a lot is this Einstein equivalency principle. And so they'll be on a ship and they'll need gravity for something. And so they'll start accelerating towards wherever they're going at 9.8 meters per second squared, which is what we feel as the force of gravity here on the Earth.
Okay.
So that's the Einstein equivalency principle. It's impossible to tell the difference between a uniformly accelerating reference frame and a uniform magnetic field, or uniform gravitational field.
Okay.
Okay. And my brain just went off in a tangent because that's what it does. Oh, flat Earth. There we go. Yeah. Sorry. So unless you just assume that things fall, which I've actually heard flat earthers say, there's no such thing as gravity, things just fall. Okay.
I love those theories that are just like, no, that just happens.
That just happens. Yeah, I mean,
that's the reason for that.
Yeah, you drink water, you pee. It just happens. Yeah. There's nothing behind that. It drains out the other side. It's about that level of scientific inquiry, I think, comes out with things just fall. But technically, we would have to be accelerating at 9.8 meters per second squared. And so this is not a comment one way or the other on your belief in this particular thing, but if you say the Earth is just 6,000 years old, and we'll stick with that just for now because I'm not here to talk about that, but take 6,000 years, multiply it by that number of seconds, and then multiply that times 9.8 meters per second squared, and see how fast the Earth would have to be traveling and everything around it. Well, except for flat Earth doesn't believe in planets, but that's another thing we can talk about later.
Only Frisbees.
Well, according to them, I don't think there are any other planets. It's just Earth.
Oh, and it's like a hologram.
Yeah, it's like everything's a hologram, and like the sky is a video screen. There's a lot that goes into flat Earth.
Wow.
But we would have to be traveling at just multiples of the speed of light at this point in order to maintain our level of gravity, unless you just subscribe to the fact that things fall down.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that falls apart. with the flat Earth. And so there's just so much that you look at and you go, well, how are you getting this? Like I saw a guy today, and we're on flat Earth right now. I know we're supposed to be talking about the moon landing, but we'll get to that.
We'll get there.
They are so intertwined. But he was talking about how in order to, and it's kind of what we were talking about just a minute ago with this centripetal force and gravity acting as a string. He was talking about how in order for airplane pilots to fly around the world, they would constantly have to be angling their nose down in order to stay with the curvature of the Earth, which is ridiculous because gravity is going to hold you to that curvature as you go around.
The same way,
The same way the string holds the bucket to your hand. Yeah. Right. So he goes on to say that, and that's great if you're moving east to west, and this is kind of how the guy sounds. That's great if you're moving east to west, but watch, what if I fly from the North Pole to the South Pole? I got to keep angling the nose of my plane down and angling it down and angling it down, and then when I get to the South Pole, look, I'm upside down. And we know people on the South Pole ain't upside down. Here's irrefutable proof. And I'm looking at this going, man, I really hope this is like Poe's law. You know, where you can't, with the Poe's law being that you can't tell the difference between an actual extreme opinion and a satire of that opinion. Yeah. And I'm really hoping that was just Poe's law in action, and this guy's not, that's not his irrefutable proof of flat Earth.
Yeah.
You know. But I think the moon landing hoax a lot of time ties in with flat Earth, because if there's a moon, then it's got to be doing something, and if it's doing something, then it's got to be moving in a circle, and if it's going to be moving in a circle, then we kind of, the flat Earth thing kind of all goes kind of wonky on us, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think the two definitely tie into one another on a grand scale, and so I think that's why you get a lot of flat Earth and moon landing hoaxers that are in the same boat.
Yeah, and it's just like I remember when I was a kid, and you know, at a certain age, you don't even understand. Like my son Davey, he doesn't have a clue about this stuff. At a certain point where like you learn about this stuff, and I remember talking with my dad about it, and I was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. I don't remember how old it was. And he was explaining to me how the Earth was round. I was like, no, it can't be round. It's like, look, it's flat. You know?
Yeah.
And he was like, no. He's like, think about like a basketball. You have like an ant on the basketball. It looks round to us, but you know, if you're small enough, then you know it's going to look flat or whatever. And I remember just even as a kid, as being like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Well, Einstein explained it with these things called geodesics, and it's exactly what you're talking about. There's actually a physical term for it, and one of the things in geodesics says that at a small enough locality, everything is flat.
Yeah.
If you get down to a small enough locality on any curved surface, you can ignore the curve, and it basically becomes flat.
Right.
And so from where you're standing and where you're looking, the Earth does look incredibly flat, but it does round off. Like it just happens.
Right.
You're not there to see it. You know, it's one of those things like ships on the horizon. Like if you have a strong enough pair of binoculars and look out to the horizon, you'll see the top of a ship before you see the bottom of it when it's approaching you, and that's because it's coming over the curvature of the Earth. And I've actually heard that where they've tried to use that as disproof of the curvature of the Earth, and I'm not really sure how that works. Like they started into it, and I just went, I'm not going to be able to follow this anymore, and I know I'm not going to be able to follow this anymore, and I just kind of turned off the video.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing about the flat Earth thing is that soon it will be easy to that should just completely vanish whenever we can have commercial space flights into
I think
orbit.
It will. I think you'll still have your diehards that are telling, those aren't really windows, those are video screens.
Yeah.
They're taking, like that's not actually happening. They're taking you high above the disc and showing you computer animated videos. So there's always going to be the people that you're just like, no, here, put on a spacesuit, or better yet, don't. And just, so I mean, there's always going to be your diehards that there's no way you're ever going to get rid of it.
Drone. I've seen YouTube videos of people actually flying drones.
Yeah,
up into space.
Yeah, that are high enough that you can see. But
or like a balloon.
But then again, they're well, that's just. Well, the biggest thing against flat Earth, dude, is that there are different constellations in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah.
Like if you go to the southern hemisphere, you will not see the same sky you see from the northern hemisphere. If you go to Australia, you will see different stars. Yeah. That's only going to be possible if you're on a sphere, because if you're on a disc, we should all be looking up at the same sky.
Right.
So even constellations, basic basic astronomy, things people have been staring up at since before Plato's cave.
Yeah.
You can see, no, man, you have to be on a ball. You have to have a 360 view this way, not this way, in order to be able to see. I don't know, and maybe, again, somebody could enlighten me. I don't understand how they come up with a good theory for seasons.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Because we know seasons are based on the angle of the Earth to the sun. We know that when it's summer here, it's winter in the southern hemisphere. When it's winter in the southern hemisphere, it's summer here. Like, they don't have a white Christmas in Australia because it's usually like 90 degrees down there or higher because it's the middle of summer for them. So I don't understand how they get past that, because that in and of itself only makes sense on a round, slightly tilted, Earth. Yeah. And it's because of sun angle, by the way, not distance. A lot of people think, when it tilts back this way, like this mic, and the sun's here, there's a bigger distance here, and it's not distance, it's sun angle. So basically, what happens is the southern hemisphere is, because it's round. Here's another thing. Here we go. So sun angle, right? So as the ball that we're living on tilts this way, the sunlight coming in can actually skip off the ball more easily, and it actually has more atmosphere to get through before it gets to the Earth, and so that's why you get the cooling in most years, the cooling of winter.
Yeah.
In the southern, when it's in that configuration with the southern hemisphere, it actually is straighter on to the energy that it's receiving from the sun. There's less atmosphere for it to go through, and the sun is hitting at a more direct angle, which is causing more absorption, which is causing things to heat up. So again, even seasons, because of the angle of the Earth and the way the sun reflects off of it, even seasons are based on our understanding of how seasons and crops work is based on the fact that we live on a round ball.
Yeah. No. One thing I saw one time about Flat Earth was like, I watched part. I couldn't get much through it, but it was part of the.
They're hard to get through, dude.
They really are, and they're so long.
Yeah,
and,
it takes a lot of explaining, dude.
Yeah, and most of it's about NASA faking stuff. But
yeah.
But one description I saw was and I think there's like multiple flat Earth theories, isn't there?
I think there is.
Yeah.
It just
Well, the one I saw, they thought the Earth. So the Earth is of course a disk, but it was kind of like it's like if you took the Earth and kind of smashed it down and flattened it out,
right,
to where like when you think you're traveling around the Earth, you're really just kind of going in a circle on top of the disk or something like that.
And there's
sun, and the sun just kind of moves like in a circle like that. And they sort of explain the night and day thing that way somehow.
Yeah, I don't get night and day either. I think the only thing I can think of, hold on, let me put my little physics brain to work and see if I can do this. The only thing I can think of is if it's the sun is moving in a circle of itself, and then that circle is rotating around the disk slowly, then I guess technically you could get things that were similar to seasons and then night and day, because the sun would set.
This is like it would never be totally dark.
Because then it would never be totally dark.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not true.
Damn, I never thought of that, man. Maybe the Earth is round. I mean, like a ball, not like a disc.
Yeah.
But I mean, just even when you try to stop for a second and go, okay, well, hold on, let's see if your brain just goes, and there's nothing you can do except go, no, that's just kind of stupid.
Yeah. The only, and I think we talked about this before, maybe even on the show, the only case I can see for flat Earth being real is if, like, we're living in some kind of weird, like, what was that movie, The Truman Show?
Yeah.
The kind of like reality or something where the whole thing is fake, or somehow.
Right, but then you've still got things like the Coriolis effect and
I mean, like if we're in like some kind of almost like computer program or something, we're not even real kind of thing.
Well, that's a whole different story for a whole different show, and I'll be more than happy to have that one with you based on a new experiment that just came out not too long ago. But
you know what I mean, though, that would make some sense. But as far as like if you have the sense that we're in this physical world that is real, at least to a certain extent, and the way that we observe it. It just it
all falls apart, and it's just the thing is, like, every time, like I said, like we both said, you can't get through the documentaries on flat Earth, because after a while you're just like, man, that's not how that works at all.
Yeah.
And of course, they'll tell you, oh, you've been brainwashed by modern science, but
I've watched some pretty long and ridiculous conspiracy theory documentaries before.
Well, I have too, but they have to be interesting, like aliens.
Something.
Yeah,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like that's how bad they are. I can't even get through them. I mean, I've watched like long ones on the Beatles, the whole Alex Jones and Bill Hicks thing. I mean, I've watched tons and tons of them, because they're fun to watch, even if they're kind of ridiculous.
Yeah,
but that one is just like,
man, you just can't. Yeah,
it's not even plausible enough to be interesting.
No, it's not. And the thing is, like I said, and of course, not to say that everybody that believes the moon landing is a hoax is a flat earther. Not saying that at all.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
It's just. Those two theories a lot of times go hand in hand because flat and I would be willing to say that almost not every person that believes the moon landing a hoax is a flat earther, but I'd be willing to bet almost every flat earther thinks the moon landing was a hoax.
Yeah, for sure. I would say the moon if you were going to rank conspiracy theories that I mean there depends on what you classify as a conspiracy theory.
Yeah,
as far as like the big ones that people believe the most likely, I would say it goes like this: JFK being number one, moon landing, and then 9/11, and then
all the others. I think flat Earth's got to be at the bottom of the barrel, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty far. I don't meet a lot of them.
Yeah, I've met some people that believe the moon landing was a hoax. To be honest with you, I'm one of those 9/11 kind of kind of folks. But I've never actually met a flat earther face to face. I've never met anyone that I talked to that was like, no, the Earth's completely flat, and here's why. So they've got to be few and far between. Because I mean, I've got tons of people who how can I say this, that hold to theories and beliefs that I'm just like, no, there's no way that's the way things work, but none of them that I know of, and maybe they just never had the gumption to bring it up to me. But I mean, I can't remember anybody growing up ever telling me the Earth was flat. Like I grew up knowing the Earth was round.
Yeah,
like,
I never heard about this till like the past few years.
Yeah, I never. I mean, the people
I knew there was a flat Earth society.
There still is,
but that was like. It's such a little bitty group of people.
And I think it still is to a certain extent. They're just getting so vocal for some reason. It's the same.
And there's like celebrities or something that are talking about it.
Well, there was like some rappers and stuff. Apparently one of the rappers, and I'm not a huge fan of this will probably shock a lot of people. I'm not a huge fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I'm not either, actually.
No, I'm not. I mean, a lot of what he says is true. I don't enjoy. I think. Have you ever seen the comic between him and Pluto? He's like, "You're not a planet," and Pluto's like, "Yeah, you're not Carl Sagan." Like that to me, I love that video because I really think that's who Neil's trying to be. He's really trying to be.
Yeah, he was like big buddies with him apparently.
Yeah, but he's not.
Yeah, what Neil deGrasse Tyson to me, he reminds me of what annoys me about science. Is like the cool thing about science is it's like seeking the truth, using real like material evidence and everything to try to find the truth. And while I like that idea, there's a lot of science that's like, if it can't be proven by these very specific ways and old methods, then it just absolutely cannot be true. And to even entertain the possibility would be to discredit my entire life's work.
And I think that's a big part of the problem. And science, a lot of times, certain areas of it, certainly these days, there's a lot more of shaping data to fit theories rather than theories to fit data.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Neil does that. Neil's an astrophysicist, so the stuff he does is pretty much, I mean, it's good stuff. Don't get me wrong. I've got some friends that are astrophysicists. I've got a guy that I'm friends with on Facebook that was my professor at MTSU who's just getting his doctorate in observational astrophysics, which is really cool stuff. The stuff he does is a lot of the ways how we're figuring out that there's these planets out there that could support life. But the problem is that it's Neil's snark. Like to me, science is supposed to be humble. Like we have a series of theories and understandings and an understanding of the universe that seems to hold up and it's logically consistent and we haven't seen it violated yet. And those are things that science should say. You know what I mean? Science should never be... Science is not about being 100% sure of everything you believe. Right. Science is about understanding that we have a series of experiments that have shown this to be true, and it's the best understanding we have at this time. And if something comes along 2 days from now that turns that whole thing on its ear, like the EM drive, then yeah, you know what? We stop it for a second. We step back and go, maybe we're wrong about that. And we start a whole new set of theories and experiments to try and understand why we were wrong before, rather than just be like, no, that can't work. And the poor guy that came up with the EM drive's been dealing with that since the first. We could have had this thing 30 years ago, man.
Wow.
Like this was like, I believe, this dude came up with this like in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe even prior to that, he was messing around with it and being told, you're an idiot, there's no way this works. I remember seeing the EM drive in in energy company conspiracy videos, back in the early 2000s. because he was being mocked because it violated the laws of laws of conservation of momentum.
Of course, you know what door he just opened though.
What's that?
The door of the government has had that technology and knows it works. Has known it worked for probably a long time, and just now we're starting to see it go public. You know.
Well, I mean, that's not. I don't know. I mean,
I think that's very possible. Like with the you can almost build this entire theory around the SR-71.
Yeah.
Because it's like they started working on that right after World War II, but we didn't know about it until the 70s. So it's like there is obviously some stuff that they have been doing that they know works, and they don't even tell us about it.
Well, the F-117 was the same way, man. They had that thing for years before it even got leaked.
What was that? Is that a jet?
The F-117 Nighthawk, the stealth fighter, that the triangular thing with all the edges and the fin.
Yeah.
They had that thing forever, dude, before they even began to hint that it existed. So there's no way the government doesn't have. I mean, if I think it's more naive and conspiracy based to say we know everything the government has, than to say the government's had technologies for years. I don't think the government's had the EM drive for years.
So.
I don't think so. I think it was a situation there was so much ridicule about it that I don't think it was anything that the government even began to. I think it's one of those things where government scientists would have just said, "No, dude, that's nothing." Yeah. But now we're finding out it's not just nothing. There's actually something going on with it, you know. Yeah. And one of the cooler things within it, I mean, if I keep popping tangents, we'll be here, you know, till 2 a.m. But it actually shows that you may actually be able to actually perturb space-time. And the perturbation of space-time is the concept that, oddly enough, Gene Roddenberry used for the warp drive in Star Trek. Yeah. Like we have a working theory for warp drive.
It's like light speed doesn't actually work, right? So we have to find some way around it.
Yeah, which is the expansion and contraction of space.
Yeah.
Which, according to the Big Bang Theory, can happen at faster than the speed of light. It was called hyper expansion, and it's where space itself expands faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
And so if you can, and it only has to be done in a localized area. But if you can actually contract space in front of an object faster than the speed of light and expand space behind an object faster than the speed of light, you move that object through space, although the object never moves.
Yeah.
So
something I meant to say real quick when you're talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson, like one of the things I remember watching his show at one point, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I remember seeing and looking into it at one point, and I can't for the life of me remember what they all were, but I remember seeing that there were several different credible theories on what killed the dinosaurs. From what I had seen, and
I'll be honest with you, I don't mean to sound too uninformed, but I only really know of the Yucatan theory with the asteroid. Yeah.
And I swear, I brought this up, and I can't remember what they were. But I remember looking at them, and I think one of them was there was something that really just made sense to me of why the asteroid theory couldn't work or something. I have to look into it now, but. I think one of them was disease was one of the theories, but there was several theories, and they all seemed kind of legit. But I've always thought it. But to me, that's an example of something that's always just stated as fact. The asteroid killed the dinosaurs.
The asteroid killed the dinosaurs,
and that's so long ago. I mean, we don't know that necessarily.
No, not necessarily. You know? I think it's a plausible theory, and so everybody's just kind of latched onto it. And I think there's some. If I'm not mistaken, there's an ash layer in the geological record that lends to the credibility of the asteroid actually destroying the dinosaurs. Okay. That we know there was some sort of cataclysm about that time,
right?
Whatever it may have been, and I think the best theory that we had for it was a massive collision.
Yeah.
So
I know one theory was I'm thinking I read this one time that they literally just evolved into. Well,
now the thing is. We know that there was a mass die-off. We know that. But the theory that they evolved into birds.
Yeah.
Which, in all honesty, is not that far-fetched. I was reading something not too long ago that says they found recently, and I think within the last 2 or 3 years, feathered dinosaurs. That it's possible that dinosaurs didn't have scales like we think they did. It's a very, very good possibility that dinosaurs were feathered.
Yeah.
And just over time, they shrunk because you see that... in species when environment changes, the what we refer to, or what anthropologists refer to as the paleomegafauna, which paleomegafauna are things like mammoths and mastodons and saber-toothed cats and things like
Yeah.
that, the tree sloths and things like that, the big huge creatures that we know existed
Yeah.
10, 15, 20,000 years up until 10, 15, 20,000 years ago, and they died off because of competition and different things like that. But it's possible that with the rise of mammals that there was more competition for food, and so the smaller dinosaurs started didn't have to eat as much,
Yeah.
and so they didn't suffer from food competition as much, and then over time, they ended up evolving. And there's a lot of other things that go along with that, the position of the pelvic bones in dinosaurs as compared to birds, and so there's a really good possibility that there are dinosaurs flying around this planet every day, chirping in our ears.
But yeah, that was one of the things that kind of annoys me sometimes is when you hear like how old the pyramids are, stuff like that. When you hear like these things stated as absolute facts, it's like, well, maybe we can't talk about it.
I think we have a decent idea of how old the pyramids are, mostly because of the freaking records that the Egyptians, were almost OCD about keeping. But the Sphinx is the one that I don't think anybody knows. The pyramids, I think we can go, no, they're that old. We have this record where they were built. But the Sphinx, nobody knows how old the Sphinx is, dude. The Sphinx is kind of a crazy one. Like, there's some theory that the Sphinx was there when Egypt was not even
I've read a lot of
empire yet.
That all of it was there, and they just pretty much took it over. Like, I read something about the pyramids. Some scientists thought that they were like 10,000 years plus old because he could see erosion on the pyramids that looked like from heavy rainfall, and he thought the pyramids dated back to a time when that area was a jungle.
Now, I've heard that about the Sphinx. I haven't heard it about the pyramids, but I have heard that about the Sphinx, that there is rain erosion and watermarks on the Sphinx that can't be accounted for with like Nile flooding and things like that. So I don't know I'd have to look deeper into the pyramid side of it, but the Sphinx, I know for a fact there's still some contention as to how old the Sphinx is.
Some people think that the face used to be different and they changed it to look more like them,
we know that it used to have a nose before Napoleon's, soldiers got there.
Oh yeah, blew it up.
Yeah, well, they shut the nose off.
Yeah,
like that's that we know that the French like literally took pot shots at the Sphinx.
Assholes.
Yeah, it's kind of like blowing up the largest Buddhas in the world. But we won't get into that either.
Oh, man,
yeah.
So much history just destroyed by idiots.
Yeah, for whatever reason they've got. It's happened throughout. There's so much we're never going to know happened on this planet because some idiot destroyed it. So much antiquity that's just lost. I mean, we won't even get talked about the Library of Alexandria.
There's probably like historical things that were found that were made of gold that people probably were like, oh, gold, and melted it down.
Yeah, melted it down. Yeah, this thing's, some 30, 40,000 year old artifact that proves that Homo sapiens go back much further than we thought, and or Neanderthals could speak or whatever, and somebody was like, oh, I'm going to melt this down and sell it, and he was like, great. That's one of a kind it's the only artifact from a culture we never knew existed, and now we never will. Congratulations on your bar of gold. Yeah. No, I don't know that's happened.
I know. But navigating, sort of back in the direction of the moon landing. I was going to ask you, what do you think about the theory that the government has a fast way of going to the moon and actually has like bases and stuff on the dark side.
On the dark side of the moon. I don't know. I mean, there's some interesting photos from the dark side of the moon.
I've seen a few.
That look to be man-made or some sort of intelligence on it.
It's always so hard to tell though, because they're
like Bigfoot photos.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like they're always just super. They're like Bigfoot UFO and secret moon bases. Man, nobody can get the focus right. I'll never quite understand why that is. It's like, dude, just click the dial. So I don't know. I mean, I've never seen any evidence for it, and so I have a hard time believing it. That's like the hyper fast vacuum sealed rail system that's supposed to run between the U.S. that can get you from like D.C. to NORAD in 15 minutes or something, which in theory would work, but I don't know that it's actually been done. So I mean, I've never seen any evidence for a hyperspace transit to the moon or whatever. But I mean, the thing with it is, and of course, I've actually started back heavily into writing, and so actually, oddly enough, as someone who kind of looks at conspiracy theories, sideways, I'm actually coming up in my books and things like that because I'm kind of sort of trying to write a modern mythology. And so I'm kind of like, how could this, if this was true, how would this work? And the thing is, there's a lot of space in this country that nobody watches on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you've been out west.
Oh, yeah. It's huge.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's empty.
It makes the population problem seem kind of silly.
Yeah, it does. The population...
There's no food out there, though.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like, the population thing is more like food and resources than it is living space. Which kind of makes me, I don't think the Earth's overpopulated, but that argument about you can fit everybody in Texas, yeah, but how are you going to feed them?
Exactly. I think technology will take care of that problem before we have too many people.
Yeah, as long as people will shut up about GMOs killing everybody, we'll be fine. We need GMOs. That's another conspiracy theory. We're just going to hit them all this time around.
Yeah.
But we need GMOs, to feed the population because, man, the stuff that we've been doing ain't going to cut it for much longer. There's just too many freaking people. You know what I mean? But anyways, what I was saying, is it possible that there is that? Well, yes. Is it probable? No. I mean, there could be a base out near NORAD or out in the middle of the Badlands of Wyoming where nobody ever goes for any reason, where they can just randomly launch things into space from a base nobody knows is there. Is that possible? Yeah, I mean, the government's got all sorts of secret crap everywhere that nobody knows about. So could they have that? Sure, I guess they could. But, do I think it's true? Probably not.
Yeah.
I don't know what... Like, the only thing that I can come up with that's even a viable reason to have a moon base is as a launching point to Mars. You know what I mean? Things like that.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why we would have a base on the moon. And if we had a base on the moon, it's got to be staffed. And so if it's going to be staffed, then the people that are staffing it after a while are going to have to, come back to Earth. And I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, the only way that works is if you have permanent habitation. Like, there are families up there that never go anywhere else. Or, it's like the secret space program. Like, I think that's a cool idea, and I'm actually working with it in one of my books. But in order to have a secret space program, you have to have an entirely separate population that does nothing but work and live in space.
Yeah.
Because at that point, you've got people coming back and forth. And it's fun to play with in fiction. It's fun to play with in literature. But as far as being what it is, I don't know that I agree with it. It'd be cool to think about. I'd love to think we have a secret space program.
And also, I feel like with things like that, it's easy to get confused because you think of, like, you look at where something has progressed in the past, and then you think it's going to stay on that same trajectory.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, by this time it's here, or the government has better stuff than us, then they're at this level. Like, they're going to the moon, or they're going to Mars. But it's kind of like how it was with flying cars. We realize they don't really necessarily make sense. So it could be that they have reached a level of technology where there's really no advantage to going to the moon and setting up bases there. Or
right. There's no advantage to it, and there's no... Like, technology doesn't usually function on a curve. A given piece of technology doesn't usually function on an upward curve or even a linear progression. Yeah. There are dips in it and spikes in it, and so it doesn't always. People think, oh well, we had this many years ago, and now we've still got the internal combustion engine's one of those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm still not sure that there's not a better technology out there somewhere.
Right.
But you think about the internal combustion engine. I mean, how long it took us to go from horse and buggy to internal combustion engine, and now we've been at the internal combustion engine for over a century.
Yeah.
And you can get into your own conspiracies about big oil in the automotive industry,
right.
and there's tons of those to get into.
But guns are similar, not with conspiracies, but like.
Yeah.
They progressed and got so much better for so long. And then right around the 50s and the 60s, the 70s, it's kind of like, all right,
that's a gun.
That's it. They haven't changed a whole lot.
There's a firing pin and some gunpowder burns and a round comes out the end, and that's the basic gun design.
Yeah. Now, sights and stuff. That's about it.
It's either open sights or optics have gotten better.
Right.
The actual like scopes. We were talking about that earlier.
Right. And we got guns that are lighter and more variations of calibers
But I mean the basic what actually damages the target hasn't changed in
Which I think the way that weapons technology is going to go is you're going to have higher capacity and smaller, more powerful rounds. Like, I think they'll advance gunpowder to the point and
no, that's possible. The material science.
Yeah, and use like different materials to where you can have something that's like the size of like a .22 long rifle, but it has the power of a 5.56, and you can just have 500 of them in your gun, and it still weighs the same, and they, something like that. I think.
That's. I mean, given the advances in material science, I don't think that's too far fetched.
Yeah, but of course the expense of it.
Yeah.
How it's so long before that was cheap enough.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and of course the Navy, I think, has recently discontinued, and we can throw that into possibly a conspiracy theory. I believe. I don't know that they have, but they were doing their railgun. Experiments for the longest time, which is an interesting concept. We're not, I think again the materials part of it is what keeps railguns from being viable. But it's an interesting concept to think about. Which it's still a piece of metal being hurled down range, but it's a different way of propelling it. So that I think that the railgun, the Gauss cannon railgun, whatever you want to call it, is definitely an interesting concept.
Yeah, it really is. But so yeah, the moon landing.
The moon landing. See, I told you, man, we're going to change it off on this. So here's some things, some common things I've heard about the moon landing. One was that there was no way. This is one of my favorites. There was no way that the computer power we needed at the time to get to the moon could be put in one of those little bitty capsules.
Okay.
Which is 100% true. I mean, at that time, the smallest computer, would have taken up the size of this room. But that's one of the reasons that telemetry and communication with Houston was such a big deal, is because most of the computing power, the things that were done at Houston, and they pulled the telemetry off of the pod, and the computers that actually told them what was going on were actually happening. It wasn't like a computer was processing. It wasn't like we think, okay, computer was processing this and sending the signal back, which is a lot of what happens today because of microcomputers and things like that.
Yeah.
A lot of times the sensors were just sending back this data via radio stream, and the data was being translated and monitored at Houston, at Kennedy. Oh, no, Kennedy's not at Houston. Did I just shut down? Anyway, at Houston.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No, Kennedy's in Houston, and then what's in Fort Lauderdale?
I'm not sure.
I think Kennedy's in Houston. What's in Fort Lauderdale? Anyway,
someone's probably telling us right now.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. I'm not even looking at it. But anyway, the command in Houston, they were the ones that were basically interpreting the telemetry and sending back up, and that's why, Houston, we have a problem, or how are you reading this down there, Houston? Here's what I see. They were getting the telemetry back, and so you can tell by the conversation that the astronauts are having that most of the number crunching and computing is taking place on Earth and being back and forth via radio signals to the capsule. So you don't need a huge computer right there on the ship. We're just going to the moon, which is literally 1 light second away. So you're transmitting radio. You got a 1 second delay back and forth.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
Yeah. So, and you can kind of hear that in the pauses when they're talking to each other over the radio.
Yeah.
One of the big ones is lighting. Lighting always comes up. Lighting's one of my favorites. But one of my favorites is that the lighting on the moon. It's obviously multiple light sources. Based on the way shadows fall, or this guy's lit but he's in shadow. How is that possible? As a matter of fact, I was kind of doing a little prep work today to come in here, and I found out that NVIDIA recently, they've got a new Maxwell processor chip, and they recently used it to basically show that this works this way. So one of the things that people have always said is that when Armstrong was coming off of the lander, his suit is just brightly illuminated, like it's just bright white, against the dark background of the lander. And this shows that, and of course the sun's on the other side and casting a shadow, and so this shows that he's lit from a different angle because they wanted this dramatic scene of him coming down out of the lander, and so they weren't getting it, and so they decided to light him from this different angle so you can actually see him coming down out of the lander. Well, the moon's very reflective. So much so that we can see it from Earth. So
that's true.
yeah, exactly. And so what was lighting, because you have this very white spacesuit against the lander, which you're both are in shadow, but the light's reflecting off the surface of the moon and bouncing back and hitting the suit.
Just like when you're doing film production, they have those little reflective things that they'll hold down.
Same thing. Yeah. Same exact thing. And so the moon was just acting as a giant reflector, which is what it's been doing since its formation.
Yeah.
And it was just reflecting back against Neil's suit. And so they showed that with the Maxwell processor, that their processor can now accurately reflect light to a point that it can mimic exactly what happened in that shot.
I know the flag is another one, which I saw.
The waving flag?
The flag one I always thought was a dumb, moon landing is faked evidence thing, because like they said, in space the flag wouldn't be waving. You think they would have missed that? Like that'd be such a.
I've seen that video so many times. The dude brushes up against it.
Yeah, it doesn't actually move, and the flag and the way it was explained.
Well, it does move.
Well, but it's not like just flapping.
No, it's not
in the
like
wind.
Flapping like a breeze came through the studio.
Yeah.
Close that door. We're on the moon. No, that's not. Yeah.
And the flag. The reason you could see the whole thing is because they did something to it to where it would look that way.
Yeah.
Instead of just having a flag just.
Well, there's a rod.
This is a rod in it?
There's a rod across the top of it, and the flag comes out along the rod and hangs there, and he bumped the rod. And they've actually gone back and shown in other videos that the material that the flag was made out of, that it actually flaps longer than it should. Because there's no air resistance on the moon. And so the flag actually should stop flapping long before it does, based on the fact that the moon has no atmosphere. Because what would that's called damped oscillating motion, and what would have damped that on Earth wasn't there on the moon. So what would damp it on Earth would not just be the gravitational pull trying to bring it back. Air resistance would cause it to damp. And they've shown that actually it waves longer than it would have waved. They have to be in a vacuum for that flag to have waved as long as it did.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So the flag thing can easily be flipped back around and be like, nope. And actually, to damp that oscillating motion, it would have quit moving more quickly.
Yeah. What was the thing you said that you like analyzed? Like, was it when you dropped the hammer, or there's something moved or fell?
This was the I talked about. I think I've talked about it a couple of times. I did when I was in what we call baby physics, non-calculus based physics, which is where you're not deriving any equations, you're not doing anything with calculus. You're just basically like, here's the equation, here's how it works. Newton said it works. We've shown that Newton's right. Do the calculations.
Okay.
So one of those things that we used is the pendulum equation, which wasn't Newton, it was Galileo, but the pendulum equation. And the way the pendulum equation works, it doesn't matter. Let me see if I can remember the equation off the top of my head. The length of the string, the length of the string and the gravitational field are what matters. So if you take a pendulum and you pull it all the way up here and you let it go, it'll swing back and forth at the same rate of speed as if you drop it at the same time as if you bring it down here and let it go.
Okay.
Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And that's because of conservation of gravity. So it accelerates at a speed, comes up here and stops, accelerates at a speed, comes up here and stops. And so it moves faster the higher up you go. So if you brought it down here, it moves more slowly. And so the period doesn't change based on the angle.
Yeah.
Okay. So the only thing that should change it would be the length of the string and the gravitational field. Okay. I'll double check that just a minute to make sure I'm right, because I'm sure somebody will tell me if I'm not. But I'll double check it on my. You know what? I'll double check it right now, just for you guys, just for the internet. Let me double check that I'm right on that, because it's been a hot minute since I've played with pendulums.
Didn't their footage from the moon landing? He's holding like a feather and a hammer or something, and he drops them at the same time.
I haven't seen that one.
And he's like, looks like Newton was right or something like that.
I haven't actually seen that one. Here we go. Pendulum equation of motion. Okay, so. Way to the bob, pivot, equations for simple pendulums, blah, blah, blah. Bear with me. Trying to see. 2 pi times the square root of L over G. So the length of the rope and the, this is for small angles, but the length of the rope and the gravitational field. So 2 pi square root, So the only thing that really changes the period is the length of the rope, the length of the arm, the momentum arm, and the gravitational field you're in. So here's what we did. We did an experiment for watch my brain shuts down. We did an experiment for baby physics where we used what's called an Atwood machine. An Atwood machine is a bar with 2 pulleys on it, and you put a weight on this side and it pulls it up, and you lower the weight and this side goes back down. It's used. You can use it for a lot of different things. But what we used it for was we put a pendulum in a box. We used a cereal box of all things, and a laser pointer. We cut a slit in the bottom of the box, and we showed that, and we used it to change the gravitational field, going back to Einstein's equivalency principle, between a uniformly accelerating reference frame and the gravitational field. So we made the box accelerate up more quickly. Changed the motion of the pendulum. Make the box accelerate up more slowly, you can change the motion of the pendulum. So we showed, of course, you can't get it below what the gravitational pull of the Earth is, but you can show that the faster or slower the box goes, the slower the pendulum, the change of the speed of the pendulum. So over G, so higher G. Higher G's make the pendulum swing faster, lower G's make the pendulum swing slower. Okay. Which makes sense if you think about it, because dropping it accelerates and goes back and forth. So while I was doing the background for the presentation, I discovered this. One of the Apollo missions, this piece of equipment had fallen out of one of the scientific bays and had begun to swing back and forth like a pendulum. And some people had gone in and said, based on the length of the pendulum, and we can find out the length of the pendulum based on the size, the measurements that we have from the bays. And so, using different different calculations. They determined how long the pendulum was and what its period of motion was, because you can see the period of motion in the video.
Yeah.
So I sat down with the same calculations and decided, okay, so if I want the time to be, if I want the gravitational pull to be this, now if I change the gravity to this, what does this change the time to? And I figured out what it changed the time to, and then I sped the video up so that the period of time would match what it was supposed to be if it had been in the Earth's gravitational field.
Okay.
When you do the calculations, you find out that it's in 1/6 gravity, which it should be because the moon is 1/6 the gravity of Earth.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, if you speed it up to the point, it's not quite 6 times faster because it's the square root of 1 over g. So it's not quite 6 times faster. But you speed it up to the point where it should, where the period of the pendulum matches what it should be on Earth. And the poor guys in the spacesuits, there's no way that they could have moved that quickly. I will get it to you, and we'll post it up, in the next podcast I come to, because it was so ridiculous once I sped it up that I set the whole video to yakety sax.
Yeah.
from Benny Hill, because it was such a ridiculous. The movement was so jerky and so fast that it's obvious that the video was sped up.
Yeah.
And so the thing was, it's the video. They took the video in normal G and then slowed it down to make it look like, low gravity. And it's absolutely, because the guys aren't jumping around at that point. And that was always the big thing. The pictures of them jumping and floating and then landing, that's been slowed down. But this isn't them jumping around. This is them actually doing work. And they're moving so jerky and so fast.
And the consistency of that, how would they get that perfect?
Yeah, exactly. And how would they have known, we're going to have this thing fall out and have it swing, and we're going to slow it down, and we're going to use that as a timer. There's just no way.
Yeah.
So that in and of itself shows that at least the last Apollo mission took place in 1/6 gravity. So we've been to the moon at least once.
Yeah.
So it's just things like that you look at, like the footprint. I can actually destroy the entire footprint argument with a $2 thing of baby powder from the Dollar General store. How did it stick like that if there's no moisture on the moon to make the boot print stay? You've never stuck your hand in baby powder, pulled your hand back out, and there's the imprint? Can you think of anything off the top of your head that's drier than baby powder that you experience in your daily life? But you take a big thing of baby powder, stick your hand in it, pull your hand back out, the imprint of your hand stays in the baby powder. Works with baking soda and several other things as well. The imprint will stay in there. Yeah. It's not going to collapse and go away. So that doesn't have to be moisture. It just has to be a substance that locks into itself well enough to form a shape.
Yeah.
And moon dust happens to be that thing, mainly because it's been in a vacuum for so long that nothing's worn it down. The particles of dust that are on the moon haven't been ground down to nothingness. They're there. They're sticky. They're in the form they were in when they landed because there's been nothing to grind them down.
Wow, yeah, think about that.
So when you put a shape into them, they're gonna lock into place. And no, I didn't read that anywhere. I just thought about it as I was talking about it. Like there's nothing there to grind them down. There's no elements, no wind, water, those things to make them rounder. So
That's
they're gonna lock together. They're gonna be jagged.
One thing I wish they had done is brought a gun up there and shot it. That would have been cool.
Would that be? Let me ask you, is that possible?
Well,
can you fire a gun in a vacuum?
I've read up on that some, and of course you have to have oxygen, but a lot of people say the oxygen would be locked in the case.
Would that be enough?
So that you would have enough to do it.
I guess it would be. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I guess it would be hard to get all the air out of a round.
Yeah.
I mean, on the other side of the equation, you could design a specially designed round. I mean, if you can put a man on the moon, you can design a gun that fires in space.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, the way the gun works, you have the round locked into the chamber. So when that cartridge has been ignited, as the bullet is going down the barrel, you've got a pretty good seal there.
Yeah, I guess it would have to be the oxygen locked in. I guess I always assumed that it came in through the ejection.
No, because it all happens so fast.
Yeah, I guess the round. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I've always thought that's been one of the questions. Could you fire a gun in space? But I guess you could, because it would have to be, and actually the bullet traveling down the chamber would probably create a vacuum behind the bullet.
Yeah.
So you would actually,
it would. So you'd only be using the oxygen that's in the case, even on Earth.
Yeah. I guess I did. Well, it wouldn't create a vacuum because it's not moving. But yeah. I mean, the expanding gases. So there's it's the back pressure on the round that forces it out the chamber. But I guess it would have to be the oxygen in the cartridge.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
Because there's no other way for oxygen to get into that reaction. So it has to be the oxygen in the cartridge.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that though. And then I guess the round.
I'm sure somebody will post a link somewhere.
Yeah, somebody will. I guess the round will travel 6 times further, right? Because.
Well, would it even try? I mean, the question is at that speed, would it just? What I would have to do, and I'm not going to do it right now. There's actually
further 6 times. Yeah, that's right.
It probably would travel further than that, to be honest with you, because it depends
on the angle. I guess you fire it.
Well, the angle you fire it. It also depends on escape trajectory, whatever the escape trajectory is for the moon, and I'm sure you can probably find that out pretty quickly. If the escape trajectory for the moon is actually lower than the velocity of the round would just eventually. I mean, it probably would curve some with the gravitational pull of the moon, but it eventually would just fly off.
Oh,
because there's nothing there.
Oh, yeah,
it would actually fly a lot further than that because
if you shot it into the air.
If you shot it into the air, there's a good chance it would just fly off of the moon altogether.
Yeah.
There's also a good chance that if you did it at just the right angle, if you can get above the escape velocity, if you did it at just the right angle, you could actually get a bullet orbiting the moon for all eternity, which is scary and dangerous in and of itself.
Yeah.
But, I'd have to look into that. That'd be interesting to look and see like what it would take to get a moon, what escape velocity is for the moon. And we have to know because we've been there and come back. So I'm sure there's a calculation online.
I wonder if you could fire a bullet into space. How far is it from the ground to like out of the Earth's atmosphere where something is going to keep going?
Well, that's
like roughly.
It depends on what your definition of out of the Earth's atmosphere is.
Like
usually, I think outer space. Let me look. Let me get the official here because it is the internet, and I know you guys will call me on it so fast if I don't just look it up.
There was a guy recently who broke the world record for the longest shot ever, and it was 2.4 miles. That's how long the shot was. Okay,
so let's see. Outer space starts, while there's no firm boundary, which is what I was going to say. It depends on your definition of outer space. An altitude of about 62 miles above sea level is conventionally used for the start of outer space in space treaties and aerospace records keeping.
Okay, so you would need a bullet that could travel.
Well, you'd need a bullet that would travel. Escape velocity for the Earth, if I'm not mistaken, is something around 11,000 kilometers per second.
Okay.
So you need a round traveling at about that speed.
What would that be in feet per second?
Hold on. Oh, you would ask me that. Well, it's it'd be 11,000 kilometers per second. Hold on, let me see if I can do this.
This is a rough.
Hold on, so 11,000 kilometers per second, which is 11,000 meters per second. So 11,000 meters per second is 11 million meters per second. Yeah. Thousands a million. So 11 million meters per second. So you take that and you put, let me make sure on that one. Again, let me make sure that I'm getting this right.
Didn't know this was a quiz show, did you?
No, it's fine. Dude, it's been so long. Like some of the stuff's easy. You can just look at it and be like, that's what it is. But let me see. Let me see what the escape velocity is for Earth. By the way, escape velocity is how fast something has to an object has to be traveling to leave the gravitational pull of a 11.2 kilometers per second. The escape velocity is 11.2. I said 11, so it's not 11,000. It's 11.
Okay.
So it's 11,000 meters per second, not 11,000 kilometers per second. So there I am. Okay. So sorry, I put an extra kilo in there. So 11,000 meters per second. So 11.7 kilometers per second. So multiply that times 1,000, you get 11,700 meters per second.
Okay.
I thought 11,000 kilometers per second was kind of fast. That's why I went and checked. So 11,700 meters per second is how fast this thing has to be moving. So just doing a rough equation or a rough calculation based on that, 3 meters and a little bit more is roughly, or 3 feet and a little bit is roughly a meter.
Yeah.
That's that's how you can say that. So you would have to, you were looking at 35,100 feet per second?
That's pretty fast.
Yeah. I don't think we've got anything that any ballistics that travel at that rate as of yet.
Not even that railgun, bro.
Yeah. No, I don't even think a railgun's going to reach that one, bro. So no
bullets into space.
No bullets into space at this point. Yeah.
Okay. Unless we had like a drone that we attached a gun to.
And then got the drone up there, but then your drone's outside the atmosphere, so it doesn't really count anymore. You still didn't fire a gun into space. You could fire a gun in space, but you didn't fire a gun into space.
Damn.
Sorry.
That sucks.
But
that's interesting.
Technically, if you fired, going back to the Newtonian thing we were talking about earlier, you fire a gun in space, that would be the longest shot ever.
Yeah,
because it would never stop until it ran into something.
that's true. I know if I ever got to go to space, I would bring a gun, shoot it out the window.
Peace in space, man. Peace in space. No war.
What was that? Was it Armageddon? I think it was, where they had a gun or something, and the guy was like, "Really, you brought a gun in space or something?"
Yeah, I think it was Armageddon. yeah. But
It's like, of course. If there's people, you need a gun.
You need a gun. That's. I don't understand why that's such a strange concept to come up with.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah. That other than being able to fight, that's what. But I don't know. Well, let's look at one more quick thing. Since I looked up the escape velocity for Earth.
Oh, that'd be the whole thing. If there was like a colony on Mars, they would be like, "All right, here's our chance to not have guns," but that wouldn't work.
No.
People would figure out how to get them there.
Oh, so quick. You haven't. Yeah.
And plus, like, my thing with guns is I like the idea that everyone is a little bit more dangerous to the point where people kind of are wary of each other. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to live in a blade society where people are knife fighting and stuff. You know what I mean? I don't want to get in a knife fight.
No, God, no. I'm trying to do two things at once, which is a horrible thing to do. I actually recently did a study teaching on mindfulness, which said never try to do what I'm doing right now because it makes you stupider, and it actually does. Yeah. I'm not. Let's see. I'd have to have the mass of the moon and a bunch of other stuff. 2 times the gravity mean of the radius. Yeah, and the moon's smaller. There's a lot going on here that I don't have time to actually do the equation for. Here's a moon fact sheet. Do we have an escape velocity on the moon fact sheet? That would be helpful. Let's do this and do this. Escape velocity of the moon, 2.38. See, now this does say that the Earth's escape velocity is 11.2 kilometers per second. Yeah, 11.2 kilometers per second. So 2.38 kilometers per second, which is 2,380 meters per second. So that's what?
That would be closer to...
you would get 6,000, about 7,000, 8,000 meters, 8,000 feet per second.
Oh, 8,000 feet per second?
7,000 to 8,000 feet per second.
Yeah, there's nothing that goes that fast.
Yeah.
I think like 4,000 feet per second might be some of the fastest ammo out there.
So yeah, I mean, it'd be fun to. I mean, you could figure it out how far it would travel. Especially, I mean, that one's not difficult at all because all you have to figure out is how long, how far off the surface of the moon the rifle barrel would be, and then how long it would take that barrel that round to fall.
Yeah.
And then that amount of time multiplied times the speed of the round when it left the barrel would tell you how far the round would fly. So that one can actually that's basic. That's something we did in the first 2 or 3 weeks of baby physics. You could figure that out. So that's not that big a deal.
You know, if you got to a gunfight in space, that'd be extra scary because if you got shot anywhere, you'd be done. Probably.
Oh yeah, no, there's just no yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've decided maybe not to bring guns to space because any sort of puncture in anything in space is not going to go well for anyone. Oddly enough, no one ever gets blown out into space or sucked out into space. They get blown out into space.
Oh, okay.
Because it's the wind. It's not. There's no. It's not that the.
It makes sense because the air is inside, so the air is
what's blowing you out.
Yeah. I never thought about that.
It's a zero pressure situation. It's a high pressure system moving into a low pressure system. Yeah. Technically, what's happening is you're being blown out into space from the atmosphere of your own ship.
But I guess though, still relatively, it feels like you're being sucked down into something.
Yeah, exactly. It's a reference frame issue.
Yeah.
It feels like you in your mind you're being sucked out into space, but what's happening is the wind is actually blowing you out into the atmosphere of your ship is actually blowing you out into space.
Yeah, like the doorway or whatever hole becomes like a commode, basically.
Exactly. That's basically exactly what's
like
going on.
In that scene in Total Recall. You've seen that Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's some scene in there where like the glass breaks and like everyone's getting like sucked out into Mars and they're like holding on to stuff.
Oh, it's the very very end because that's the one where like he's it's the
and he hits the
thing and it starts creating the atmosphere and all this other cool stuff.
Yeah, I love that movie. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, it is until you read the story it was based on and then you're like, oh my god, that's such a horrible movie.
Yeah.
Which is weird because the same guy that wrote the story that Blade Runner was based on, and Blade Runner was such a better movie than the book. But Total Recall is the exact opposite.
Well, of course, it's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, it's just supposed to be fun.
But it's actually based on a Philip K. Dick novel.
Okay.
Called We Can Remember It For You Wholesale.
Huh.
And it's about a company that basically implants false memories in people.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, oddly enough, the Colin Farrell version is actually truer to the story.
Really, which I hated that version.
It's actually truer to the story than the the total than
It's like
Arnold
it had
Schwarzenegger's.
all this action and no nuance. I don't know.
It was, yeah. I think they tried to do something with it and it just failed horribly.
Yeah.
But Philip K. Dick's hard to bring to the screen. Amazon's doing a good job with it, but
Yeah.
Philip K. Dick's really hard to bring to the screen. There's so much weird. I heard him today described as the Lenny Bruce of American literature.
Oh yeah,
Of American science
That's a
fiction.
compliment, for
Yeah,
sure.
it is a compliment.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes someone said he's a soul, and this may upset some people, but someone said that he was the sole product of 1950s American culture, and anything that's the sole product of anyone who's the sole product of 1950s American culture is going to go insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's much like and then he went on to say he was much like the Lenny Bruce of American sci-fi, which is definitely a compliment, but you can certainly see what they meant by it. So,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sometimes I wonder if the 50s was really like how I feel like it's one of those things that gets kind of depicted as this like Leave It to Beaver, Golden Age kind of thing, in the same way that World War II seemed so much more like pristine and clean and noble than like more modern wars like Vietnam. It was mostly because like now we're just more aware of things.
Well, I think there's a reason that Stepford Wives, the Stepford Wives and things like that, are such chilling dystopias, and I think it's because the 1950s, I think, really had a very dystopian feel to them. If you think about it, when we look back on them, it's Happy Days and Grease and all these different movies about. But America had to have its dark side back then.
Racism for one.
Oh my God, that's not even started by the level of racism in America in the 1950s. Holy crap, dude!
It's just like it wasn't. No one was paying attention to it yet.
Well, no, because it was so ubiquitous.
I won't say
it was
no
just
one,
but I'm sure there were a lot of people because 10 years later they were marching. But I think it was just so ubiquitous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was just like, well, I ain't racist. It's just the way it is. No, bro, it's not. That's not how it is at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, racism definitely for one. But I think even beyond that, there's just I'll be honest with you, the 1950s creep me the hell out.
Yeah.
The music and everything. Like, there's nothing about the 50s that I listen to that I'm just like, oh, that's cool.
Except for the cars.
I was about to say, you just comment that the words that were forming in my mouth was except for the cars. The cars are gorgeous.
Yeah.
But the music, I don't know. There's just something so creepy to me about the 50s, man. I don't know what it is. Maybe too many episodes of The Twilight Zone when I was a kid. But something about the 50s just creeps me the hell out.
You know what the 50s reminds me of? Reminds me of kind of like what you were saying, like something bad is happening and you just start singing like a happy song. Oh, go to my happy place.
Yeah, everything's great. This is fine. I'm fine. Let's listen to some Beach Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's just...
Part of it could have been, too, like post-World War II, everybody's coming home and they're like, everything is good, damn it.
Yeah.
Everything is good.
Everything is good. Shut up and sit down and eat your meatloaf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where, to an extent, like the economy was great and, to an extent.
To an extent,
like
because we were making loans to everybody all over the world to rebuild World War II. Yeah. But that was a lot.
Of course, Korea was going on. It's like, it truly is the forgotten war.
Yeah. Hardly anyone ever, like my principal served in Korea, but you hardly ever hear anything about it. As a matter of fact, what's oddly enough is one of the few shows about the 50s that never creeped me out, MASH.
Oh, yeah.
But you forget that it's set in the 50s.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean? It's just like it's the Korean War.
I sort of think of it as Vietnam sometimes, and I forget that it's
actually set in Korea, yeah. But I don't know what happened to Korea. Yeah. Like, it just, we obviously lost, but we lost Vietnam too.
Yeah. We should, I was talking to someone about this the other day. They should do one of the next, because you know how with the first person shooter games, they're going back to the older stuff. Like, I think the next Call of Duty is going to be Vietnam. They ought to do one of the Korean War.
Yeah.
Because it'd be cool because it's like World War II stuff that you're familiar with.
Yeah.
But in a different setting, and a lot of people don't know a lot about it.
Korea was it was like World War II with jets.
Yeah.
Because like the F-1 Sabre, I think, saw its debut in the Korean theater.
Yeah, I think
so. There were certain things about Korea was sort of that weird middle ground. Like there were still things held over from World War II.
But basically all of the small arms.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah, you didn't have the M14 yet, as far as I understand. Unless it was like
they were,
end of it or something.
Yeah, no, it was all still. A lot of that's a lot of the jokes that you get in. Well, like Colonel Potter in MASH was a World War II cavalry officer. Still in. There were a lot of the officers that went to Korea were World War II veterans. Like they were still in from World War II.
Like Spears from Band of Brothers, that guy.
Yeah.
Korea.
But it's so weird. I guess maybe because it happened so close on the heels, or the thing with Vietnam, I think that made it like I don't think Vietnam would be the level of what it was if it wasn't for the hippies.
That's true. Well, and Korea had to follow World War II. It was the ultimate.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, oh well,
the ultimate closer.
Enjoy your police action, guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it wasn't as big It wasn't as big as World War II.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the equation, there weren't a lot of people protesting it at the time because nobody really, I guess, cared at that moment.
They figured out that was a thing you could do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah. So I guess it fell between the war to end all wars and then
the second war to end all wars.
The second world to end all wars, which was quickly followed by Korea.
Yeah.
And then of course a war that got a lot of press because of all the hippies protesting and stuff. So.
My great uncle was a prisoner of war during the Korean War. I never got to meet him. He died before I was born, but it was Uncle Charles was his name, and they always talked about how tough he was. And my dad was born in 1950, so he wouldn't have necessarily known him before the war. But everyone always talked about how incredibly tough this guy was, and part of it was his experience over there. Apparently, they would line him up and just shoot every other one, and he just made the cut,
every single time.
I don't know how many times they did that, but he told that story, and there's some story I remember them telling. Dad grew up on a farm, and he worked on the farm too, Uncle Charles, and there's some story I heard about him growing up where they were digging a hole for an outhouse, and he just was this big old strong dude and just started digging, and before he knew it, he had literally dug himself into the hole and couldn't get out of it.
Oh my God!
And they always just told that story. It was like he just went to this place in his head and was just
digging.
I'm digging, And he was always a little weird. And
I can imagine. Well, yeah, years in a Korean prison camp will do that to you.
Yeah, and it's just Jesus, and I had another uncle that got killed really early on in the war. Just got blown up or something.
I had an uncle that was a World War II veteran, had a sheep stomach. Because he got caught behind enemy lines and didn't want to eat snow because he knew it would lower his body temperature. So he cut the coolant line on a German Jeep and ended up laying under a German Jeep and drank coolant to stay alive.
Wow!
And it ate the lining of his stomach, destroyed the lining of his stomach, and he had to have a sheep stomach put in.
Man, I didn't know they could do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he had a sheep stomach. It was crazy, dude. Yeah,
that's insane.
I didn't hear that story for years. Right before he died, somebody told me about it. But yeah.
Wow.
Uncle A.T. Yeah, he was a too tough old dude.
Wow.
But yeah, I had a couple of my great grandfather and my great grandmother's brother served in the Navy. My great grandfather, I guess my step great grandfather, if you could say it that way, was actually a submariner during World War II under the Sea of Japan. Those things where back when subs were when they had to surface at night to run the diesel and charge their batteries.
Pedal it,
Yeah, they'd surface at night to run the diesel and charge their batteries. They'd bathe in their helmets and hot racket, because there weren't enough beds for all the people on the ship, and so all sorts of crazy stuff that he had to go through.
My grandfather was on my dad's side. He drove the amphibious units and came on the shores of Normandy, Utah Beach.
What are those? There's a name for those boats. There's somebody's last name.
What are they called? I know they call them U-boats.
No, U-boats are German submarines.
That's right. Yeah. What am I thinking?
Hold on. Since we don't have anybody behind the...
No, they call them ducks. I know that was one name they had.
There's actually... hold on one second.
There's an acronym.
But no, there's a name. Landing boats at Normandy. I'm only going to look for just a second. I'm not going to disappear into the... Higgins boats. The LCVP, landing craft vehicle personal, are Higgins boats.
Okay.
I think Higgins was the guy that designed them, so they called them Higgins boats. Yeah. But I knew there was somebody's last name. I couldn't remember what it was, though. But yeah, they're called Higgins boats.
I remember he, that generation never really told, war stories, it seemed like. Ever.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's just, the thing is, most of the time when you go, you don't really, there's only 2 or 3 that I'll tell, and I didn't see that much. There's just, still some things over there that I'm just like, nah, dude, I'll drag that up when I'm 70.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's, and war has gotten so much cleaner since World War II. So I can only imagine, I know my uncle, like I said, my Uncle Dickie, which was my great grandmother's brother, he was in the Navy, but he was on a ship. I think he was in the Pacific too, that got hit by a Japanese round, and his buddy, just his best friend he'd grown up with in high school, they were on the same ship, and the round hit and his buddy was just not there anymore. You know what I mean? So I mean, there was just so much. I think the full story is he ended up with part of him on him, it was just the hell that war was.
Something you just can't imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Like stories that my principal that served in Korea would tell us about. That they were walking through a field and looked up, and there was they thought it was like a flag or something that was flapping in a tree, and as they got closer, they realized it was what was left of a person, and it was like his shoulders and his head, and like 3 or 4 strands of like meat that were connected to his pelvis, and his feet were flapping in the wind, and they thought it was a flag. Yeah. Something that got caught in the tree, and the guy had been blown up into the tree. Yeah. So I mean, it's just you can't imagine.
Well, it's like stuff you don't think about with war because. Because I grew up shooting guns and like destroying things and all this kind of stuff my whole life, and you don't think about how fragile the human body is. You watch war movies and you're like, oh, that guy got shot, he fell down or whatever, and you don't think about that the human body is very
it's not designed
soft.
to take that level of punishment, bro. We're squishy.
Yeah, and weird things happen. And it's just it's crazy. It's hard I can't imagine it.
No, I mean, like I said, I've been and that war was sterile almost, and there were some people over there that took some. I lost a friend in Afghanistan, and I had some friends that were wounded over there, and so it's no less violent, I guess, or any worse of a thing or any better of a thing to see. But you think about trench warfare and the things that people went through in the desert wars and things like that, and
D-Day, like Omaha Beach.
That's the thing. Like, and I think that's when I say that the desert wars have been more sterile. Is there hasn't been an Omaha Beach. They haven't had to storm Fortress Kuwait or Fortress Iraq. We were there, and it was rough, and there were a lot of good men died, and
it's like more of like you see the same things, but just not as much of it at one time.
Yeah, exactly. The wounded are fewer and further between. I think, and still doesn't make any difference if you're one of the wounded. You know what I mean? Doesn't there are only 5 men were wounded today? Well, I was one of those 5. It doesn't really make any difference if it was 5 or 3,000 if you're one of the people that was wounded.
Right.
But it's a different. War is definitely by all means has to be a different experience at this point, and I say that because I don't have a frame of reference for World War II. I wasn't there.
Yeah, I wasn't either.
Yeah, exactly. So but based on sheer numbers and pictures and things like that, it's a totally different way of doing war. I mean, we didn't have Predator drones. During World War II.
Yeah, and it's just insane to think. I can imagine that. Like you've got to run up this beach and I don't know, just from being on shooting ranges.
Yeah, you'd be on the other end of a shooting range. Yeah,
yeah. It's like insane to think. I think about that every time I go to Knob Creek, which is a big machine gun shoot. Which if you've never been, you got to go at some point. And they have this big long firing line with all these people who are either really wealthy or they bought machine guns back when they were somewhat affordable. And just every so often, they just all cut loose. Just tons and tons of people shooting rounds. And every time I go, I always think about D-Day.
Yeah.
And how even on like Omaha Beach, for example, which that was the bad one because all the rounds missed and everything.
Yeah.
All the artillery.
All the bombs and the artillery and everything else. Yeah.
So it was like all, untouched pillboxes. And it was even probably more hectic than that.
Mm-hmm.
More machine gun fire. And then also, it's not that they're just throwing it everywhere. Like they're aiming at the people.
Yeah, as best as you can with a machine gun. But
and it's just like, oh man, it's hard to imagine. Like, how would anybody even get up the beach?
Yeah, how do we even begin how do we? Just sheer numbers. They just kept throwing men at it.
Yeah,
until people started getting through.
It's like the first wave. It's like most of them didn't make it.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen mortality numbers, but casualty figures. But I can only assume that it was in the 70s or 80% casualty. It had to have been.
Yeah.
Unless the Germans were just drunk when we showed up.
Yeah, possible.
That'd be the only way. Like, they're not coming here. Yeah, well, it turns out, yeah.
It's like that opening scene in Saving Private Ryan, which I'm sure is even just a fraction of what it was really like. But still, especially for the time, because I saw it when I was a kid, it was one of those deals where, my parents weren't really letting me watch movies like that yet, but they were like, this is a movie that everyone should see kind of thing. You know? And I remember that first scene. It's just like, oh, those guys are all dead.
Yeah, you just hear the rounds rip through everybody. Yeah,
Oh my god.
Now I've been that close to incoming rounds. It's an interesting sound.
Yeah,
to be honest with you, but luckily,
I can imagine. I
didn't come out with a Purple Heart because of it. So
that's good.
Yeah,
I only have one reference for that because one time we were doing this video where we basically like we were trying to make it look like a zombie was coming up over the hill. So Dad could, shoot. So it's like head comes over the hill, and Dad shoots a head, and it's like falls over, right? So we built this like thing on this cart. It's like basically like a lawn maintenance wagon, And we built this thing up. So we had this head. It was basically a 2-liter bottle that was red with a mask over it, right? So we had this apparatus we had built. Put like one of those dog things, like screwed it in, like for a leash. And so it had like on a little pulley system. So I'm off way to the side, and Dad's, down. So I'm like this way, Dad's down that way, going to shoot it. And I'm like pulling this thing up. It sounds more unsafe than it was. And, just gradually like pulling
your
this thing
range
up.
safety record isn't. It's taking a hit here, bro.
Yeah. But I mean, I was really. There was no way that round could have hit me. There's literally no way. No way in the universe that it could have. But
let me introduce you to quantum mechanics.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well.
Go ahead.
So the target is here. Dad is here, and I'm like way back this way and laying on the ground, pulling it. But even that, I got for the first time ever in my life, I got to hear the actual round because I was far enough away to where I heard that crack sound,
and then the round flying through the air
before I heard the actual gunshot. So I got to actually hear that with my own ears, and there was something chilling about, like I've been shooting guns my whole life, but there's something chilling about being able to have, like, there's something in your brain that goes like, I understand how fast that's moving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That would have hurt like hell. Yeah.
It's
a sobering, right? It's a sobering sound. You know what I mean? It's sobering to hear it hit something and not have heard the round. Not have heard the report from the cartridge. Just the dum 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 dum. You're like, that was machine gun fire, and to have it hit something. It's interesting.
And that was just in a static environment. I can only imagine like those rounds are trying to find you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But
it was an interesting experience. But moon landing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I think we've hit like all of the high points. I don't know, the lighting, the shadows. If you want to do your own experiment with the shadows, a fun one to do is just to take, a couple of paper towel rolls, set them at different heights, like stack books. I was going to do that today. Or you can stack books up and put paper towel rolls on, but then hit them with a flashlight and look at the different angles that the shadows make based on their height and the relation of the ground behind them and different things like that. You can get all kinds of crazy different angles from one light source and two different like basically paper towel rolls, just at different heights and with different things behind them. So if the earth is rising and you've got or the ground is rising and you've got something here, you can actually get the shadow to move without moving the light source. And that was one of the things that they say is it's obviously done from multiple light sources because these two shadows are going different directions, and they wouldn't be going different directions if it weren't from multiple light sources. That kind of falls apart, and you realize that there were multiple light sources. There'd also be multiple shadows that you'd be able to see. And so the multiple light source theory falls apart. Another big one they like to point to is there's no stars in the sky.
Yeah, that's right. I meant to bring that up.
Yeah. Well, the reason there's no stars in the sky, you can go out and and look at pictures of the desert at night that people have taken where they've lit up the desert to take a photo. Look at the sky. There's no stars there either. The theory is that, there's no stars in the sky because NASA knew that they couldn't accurately replicate the star patterns that should be out there, and so people would be able to be like, no, Orion's in the wrong place. Like if you're going to spend apparently billions of dollars making a fake, imaging program to fake the moon landing that you weren't going to be able to calculate where stars should be. Yeah. I don't know. But the reason it is just the exposure length on the film. So you're taking photos on the light side of the moon, right? On the near side of the moon that's being illuminated by the sun. We already know the moon's highly reflective. We just discussed that not too long ago. So you can't have a shutter speed that's going to be open long enough for you to get starlight into it. It's going to have the shutter speed's got to be quick enough that blinding white. I mean, it's how bright the moon is.
Right.
The reflected light off the moon is. It's got to be quick enough that blinding white light, you get the picture, you're done. So the starlight's not going to filter in.
It's like if we're doing a video and the light hasn't gone down enough. It's too bright outside, and Dad has like a very even like a shirt. Well, maybe not like this, but like a lighter gray shirt. Then like the range behind him just looks like super dark. Like it's nighttime behind him.
Exactly, and it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah,
but you get because the camera is gonna try and adjust for the light by lessening that the time the aperture's open, and you have to. It happens on video cameras. It happens on still cameras because you've got to work with the brightest light source there, and the stars just weren't yet.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of them up there. There's that sea rock thing, which I always thought was interesting. Apparently, at some point, you can see a rock that's been turned over, and there's supposed to be a number C etched into letter C etched into the bottom.
Oh,
of it.
yeah, that's right.
It's physics. We
yeah.
multiply by C's and do all sorts of stuff. Letters
Yeah.
and numbers are interchangeable. But there's supposed to be like the letter C etched into the rock.
I saw it could have been like a hair or something.
Yeah, well, it's a hair. It could be a mark on the rock. I mean, I don't know. I've seen things in nature that looked like C's before, different things like that. But everybody's like, oh, it's a prop designation. And no, it's a mark on the rock.
And why would you? Here's the thing, too. If you had a prop rock, a lot of money goes into making that thing look like a rock.
Yeah.
Why would you put a mark on one side of it where you couldn't use
so
both
they know
sides?
exactly where that rock was supposed to be. It's a prop rock. I don't think they've all got like rock C goes here and rock D47 goes over there and rock R2D2 goes. I don't think it works
bottom.
that way.
You'd put it on the bottom.
Well, I think that was supposed to be on the bottom and somebody kicked it or something like that. It was supposed to be. That's how they discovered it. It wasn't supposed to be there, or some prop person messed up and put the rock down the wrong direction.
Yeah. Okay.
So the C rock thing is just kind of like whatever. There's some stuff about depth of field, which doesn't work in space, because a lot of the depth of field stuff we do here on Earth, and by depth of field I mean like the mountains, 15 miles away, look differently or whatever, and that's because of the atmosphere and the haze, which you wouldn't have on the moon.
Oh yeah.
Another big one has to do, and I've yet to kind of figure this one out, has to do with the thrust when the lander landed, and the thrust when the escape module blasted off. I forget what it was. Somebody said it shouldn't have moved, or it should have moved. I can't remember. But long story short, if you go back and look, the dust moves about as far as it should. I mean, there's thrust. I mean, there's hot gas escaping both the lunar lander when it lands, the braking retro thrusters. There's hot gas escaping the rocket nozzle as it takes off. That's how rockets work. And so, it moves the dust around, but it doesn't swirl. It doesn't do all sorts of the crazy stuff that it would do here on Earth.
Yeah.
The only thing that we don't have an answer for, and I'll be deathly honest with you, is the moon should be a hell of a lot dustier than it is. And that's kind of creepy. One of the reason that the landing pads on the moon lander are so big is because they expected like just layers upon layers upon layers upon layers of dust, and when we got there was hardly any. Yeah. And it's one of the few things that we have a hard time explaining.
And that almost goes into more so not that the moon landing is fake, but the reason that the moon is there in the first place, or where it came from.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different theories on where the moon came from.
Like don't people say that it couldn't be that big or something?
Well, it's
be in the position that it's in.
Well, that's because it has no iron. There's the whole theory that the moon is. Then now we're getting into moon formation, and that's a totally different story. There's some crazy things about the moon, just some really crazy. Like the moon itself is a weird thing anyway. You should at some point. I'm not going to go into it here.
We're getting near the end.
It gets into some weird, like other conspiracy theory stuff that I'm still kind of like, But there was an incident where they crashed a piece of equipment into the moon to check for any seismic activity, because they wanted to know if the moon, had any, like Earth had a mantle.
Yeah.
And the moon rang and reverberated.
Yeah, I heard
for like
about that.
2 or 3 hours.
People think that it's hollow or something, or that it was like put there.
And well, there's a lot of weird things. Like there's the depth of crater impacts on the moon, like they're almost uniform. Which you wouldn't, they can be bigger this way, but their depth, there's not that much variance in depth, which is weird.
Oh, that is weird.
So there are some weird things about the moon that are fun to speculate about.
But I saw when we were out west this last time, I saw a meteor crater, that big one.
Yeah,
that's neat.
Yeah, and to think about that, like that they don't. There's, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, and I'm sure somebody will correct me if I am. But I don't think they're any that deep on the moon. And you would think, being in a shooting gallery the way the moon is with no atmosphere, you would see Mars itself has huge deep craters in it. Yeah. But whatever we know what the moon's made out of. It's not made out of cheese, but I don't think that the material that the moon is made out of is strong enough, for some of those impacts to have just been shrugged off, obviously, oddly enough, in the way that they were. And there's some depth, there's some difference of depth, but
Alex Jones says that the moon is an ice ball that is covered by a thick layer of dust.
That'd be an interesting concept. I mean, I don't know that we've done any core drilling on the moon, so
He has the documents.
Oh, well, in that case, if Alex has the documents, guys, I give up.
He always says that, too.
Yeah.
I have the documents.
I have the documents to prove it. Alex is an interesting individual.
Yeah.
I think he was the one you were telling me about that said there was no video of the first
Yeah,
moon
yeah.
landing or
His
something.
his theory. He was on Joe Rogan recently, and I watched bits and pieces. I want to go through and watch the whole thing at some point. But he says that again, like some top thing told him, and gave him documents.
Of course,
always
got the documents, Alex.
That basically that the moon landing was real, but the video we saw wasn't real because there was no way they could get back the film back from the moon of the actual landing. So it's like they just faked it since they couldn't have footage of the real thing. So
so let me ask this question. Let me ask this question. So, theory is that we couldn't get the film back from the moon.
Yeah.
Okay. How did we get the film to all those people's houses so they could watch it?
Yeah,
oh, crap. We broadcast it over radio waves. Yeah. That's how we got the images back. We broadcast them over radio waves. We had television at the time.
Yeah. Which I guess he would say that was fake.
Well, but not having the film, no.
That seems like a lot of work to do it for real and fake it
and fake the landing. Yeah, no, I don't. No, like that one, dude. You're just like, nope. Here's the deal: radio waves, like television. Like it got beamed into people's houses. I mean, did we just run? We didn't have Betamax or VHS back then. Yeah. So how did the videos? I mean, did Lucy and Desi just come in and perform live in those little boxes every week? Like, come on, like you, Alex, come on, Alex, step up your game, dude. You can do better than that. Like, come on, man, that one's so easy.
Yeah.
Try again. Seriously, I am disappointed in Alex Jones. If you see this, man, call me because you can do better. I've heard better conspiracy theories out of you, dude. Come on, I expected more from you, Alex.
You know what? Like the thing with Alex Jones is that he's a disinformation agent, right? And I've read into this and stuff. And the whole deal is like they say some or mostly true things, but then they squeeze in fake things, and it's like all
I don't
control.
know, man. I got deep. I'm in a lot of cases. I guess you could refer to me as a recovering conspiracy theorist. I got deep into it for a hot minute, I guess.
Yeah, I did too for a little while.
Yeah, but it's fun. I mean, it pulls you into that rabbit hole, dude. But about 10 years ago, I guess I was all about the chemtrails and all of the other stuff that you get. And then after a while, you're just like, man, like, Alec, no. Like, no, that's not actually, no. Like he's got the documents somewhere. He's got the documents to prove that they're attaching these canisters to jet planes.
Yeah,
and nobody knows about it. Like 3 people have come out and said something that worked for these different airlines. And when there's a perfectly good reason for why you see vapor trails coming off of airplanes. So it's just I don't know. That's just Alex. But
I think it's possible that Alex Jones is real. It's just that. He makes some money off of telling good stories.
He does. Well, I mean, he's the one
I would say he gets the people he gets his information from. Sometimes maybe are legit, and sometimes they're not. And he treats it all puts it all on equal footing.
Yeah.
Well,
Alex is the one that's pretty sure that the Bass Pro Shop in Memphis is an occult monument, right?
Oh, the pyramid in Memphis?
Yeah, that's now a Bass Pro Shop.
Oh, yeah.
There's some 33rd level. Dude, it was crazy because he
won in Vegas too.
Yeah, well, the one in oh, dude, you should. There was. I watched. This was one of the things where I kind of went off the. This was one of the things I kind of went off the rails on Alex with. So I don't know if anybody knows the name Isaac Tigrett. Probably not. Isaac Tigrett was one of the founding partners of the Hard Rock Cafe in London, like the original Hard Rock Cafe.
Okay.
June 14th, 1976. You can tell I worked there at some point. I can't remember the other guys. Peter. Oh, sorry, Hard Rockers, if you're out there. Peter somebody and Isaac Tigrett. Isaac stuck in my head because Isaac's from Peter Morton, because he's the grandson of the Morton Steakhouse guys.
Okay.
But Peter Morton and Isaac Tigrett. Isaac's from Jackson, Tennessee.
Oh.
Yeah. There's actually I think it's an Isaac Tigrett Middle School or something like that. It's actually named after his grandfather or something who was apparently an incredibly crooked judge. But anyway, so Isaac's from Tennessee, and Isaac's kind of the real deal. Isaac sold his shares of Hard Rock, I think in the early 80s for like $30 million, kept $1 million for himself, and has donated $29 million to a school in India.
Oh, wow.
Like, yeah, Isaac's love all, serve all that stuff that you see on Hard Rock, Save the Planet, love all, serve all, take time to be kind, all is one. That's all Isaac Tigrett. Peter Morton was the business side, and Isaac became the sort of the spiritual side of Hard Rock.
I've never actually eaten there.
The food's mediocre. The service is usually cool.
Yeah.
And that's what you're paying for at a Hard Rock. I mean, the food's decent. Sorry, Hard Rock. The food, in my humble opinion, let's not get sued by Hard Rock International. But the food's okay. I mean, I ate it a lot because I worked there. But what you're paying for is your server and the stuff that's hanging on the wall.
Stuff a lot, right?
They do have shows, especially here in Nashville. They do a lot of shows on the second floor. And you're paying for all the stuff hanging on the wall and the server to be cool and and all that good stuff. And then that's what you're really paying for when you go to a Hard Rock. I mean, who's going to pay $16 for a hamburger? I mean, that's not what you're paying for. They tell you that when you're there. They the people are paying to talk to you. People are paying for you to wait on them. People are paying for the experience. Yeah. It's not just the food. The food's a very small portion of the Hard Rock experience. We used to joke that Hard Rock was a overpriced burger shack wrapped around a t-shirt joint, and that's really what it is. Yeah. But anyway, Isaac, we went to India and just kind of got into the whole Hindu vibe and came back with a lot of take time to be kind, all is one, dreaming is lost in being, all these different things that came to be sort of the love all, serve all, came to be the mottos of Hard Rock. And I don't know why he decided to build a pyramid. I haven't looked that deeply into it, but of course Alex latched onto the Hindu side, and it was all this occult stuff, and he was in the Illuminati. Well, the reason it's pyramid because Isaac Tigrett's Illuminati. So
anything triangle. It's
anything
Illuminati.
triangle, or I think the diamond too. Like, isn't the diamond an Illuminati symbol or something like that? Yeah. That's what all the rappers are flashing. I think these days that everybody knows.
That's just about jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah,
Like they want people to think that they're like in on it.
Yeah. I if there is a real Illuminati, they're sitting there going, yeah, okay, right, whatever, Jay-Z.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're Illuminati.
We've never
bro.
even met you.
Yeah, aren't you? What? Oh, that's right. You've released a couple albums. That's cute.
I released a couple of countries.
Exactly. I own half of Europe. Matter of fact, I'm thinking of selling. Profit margins are down. But yeah, but he went on to this thing about, there was this 33rd level, because, the Masons and all this other stuff, and there was this 33rd level with all this occult stuff in it, and it was cursing Memphis and and now it's a Bass Pro Shop, so I don't know.
Cursing Memphis?
Yes. I don't know, man. It's a Bass Pro Shop. But no, that's kind of where I started kind of going. That's one of the things. Like, I'd already kind of started coming off the rails with Alex. He makes some good points about the Twin Towers and 9/11 and some stuff like that. That's interesting to think about. Yeah. But that's for a different. I think we should do a series on just like conspiracy theories, man. Like, they're just a lot of fun to do. But yeah, Alex is an interesting individual, and just some of the stuff you hear him say, sometimes you're like, yeah. Now he has had my man Ron on a lot, so I'll give him bonuses for that. He's had Ron and Rand on quite a bit, so
that's true.
I'll definitely give him props.
He does uphold the libertarian kind of side of things.
Yeah, he does, and even when he doesn't usually give us too much guff over it. So I definitely will give him props for that. But yeah, some of the stuff. Yeah. He's great research, though, when you're doing like modern mythology and conspiracy theory novels and things like that. Like, listen to Alex Jones.
Yeah, something on all of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, dude. You can just like, what if that was true? And that's that's a lot of the stuff I like to write. Like, what if this was true? Yeah. And so you can get a lot of facts from Alex to put into your work.
Have you seen the Alex Jones' Bill Hicks stuff? Have you seen any of that? It's kind of creepy. I mean, it's probably all just manufactured, But
so he's got like conspiracy theories about Bill Hicks.
Yeah, that Bill Hicks is Alex Jones. And it's creepy. You got to watch one.
Oh no, dude! I'm watching that tonight.
Oh yeah.
No, dude. I'm sorry if you're watching this, Amber. I'm sorry, but we've got our evening planned. Holy!
It's really creepy because, like, first of all, Alex Jones is supposed to be like 10 or 15 years younger than he looks. Like the age he looks is the age that Bill Hicks would be if he was still alive, and is not at all. Like, if he actually is the age he's supposed to be, he has lived hard.
Really?
Which is very possible.
I think Alex probably does. A lot of drinking.
And then there's
just a thought. I'm not saying I've had beers with the guy, but I think maybe he does a lot of drinking.
I think so, for sure. No question about it. And then there's some videos of him where there's one video on YouTube where it's called Alex Jones Has a Bill Hicks Moment. And if you've seen a lot of Bill Hicks stuff,
where he just like goes off the rails.
Well, it's just his mannerisms, like the way he kind of makes his face and stuff.
Uh-huh.
But now they're both from Texas.
Yeah.
So that could explain why they maybe have a similar mannerisms or look the same.
Yeah.
I think they're
cultural.
from the same part of Texas.
Yeah.
So that could be part of it. But you think about it, there's some similarities in how they sort of behave and the way they talk and stuff. Now, ideologically, not necessarily the same at all.
I think there's some points where Bill and Alex just completely diverge.
Oh yeah. I know they're both kind of interested in sort of conspiracy kind of stuff. You have that connection, but another connection is Bill Hicks's manager, Kevin Booth, I think is his name, is also Alex Jones's manager, and right before Bill Hicks died, he went out to what was the thing with the cult. One of the cults that Janet Reno and
Bohemian Grove.
Is it that one? Is that the one with the?
I know that's the one Alex Jones is always talking about with the big owl statue.
No, not that. It's when there's that cult leader in somewhere in Waco, Texas.
Oh, the Branch Davidian compound.
Yeah, those guys.
Okay.
Like Bill Hicks, like
I know my cults.
Yeah. Oh man.
Sorry.
But Bill Hicks went. There's footage of it online. You can find it. He went out with his manager Kevin and got a bunch of footage of that. It was when he had the beard. It's like at the very end, of, like before he died, and he even had kind of a bit about it too toward the end. And went out there and like filmed it or whatever. So people make this connection, like, oh look, he was starting to get interested in that reporting kind of stuff, and all of a sudden he disappears, and this Alex Jones guy just shows up, and there's no record of him before 1999, except for this obviously photoshopped photo. I'm speaking out.
Yeah, I got you. Fake birth certificate, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, so it's like silly, but yet eerily like, whoa, what is?
Have you ever seen? And I know we're coming to an end here, but have you ever seen the video adaptation of A Scanner Darkly?
No.
It's okay. I mean, it's not, but like Alex Jones is in it. Like it's him, and he's in it as this like crazy street prophet yeller, like he's standing on a street corner at one point in the movie. Like you only see him like 2 or 3 times, but he's like a conspiracy theory radio talk show kind of guy. But like the last time you see him in the movie, he's standing on a street corner with this. And he's telling the truth, like in the movie, like he's talking about these drugs and stuff that people are on, and he's in the street and he's yelling with this bullhorn. And the last time you see him, like this blue van pulls up and the door flies open. They just grab the guy and pull him into the van and slam the door shut, and the van drives off.
Oh man!
And that's like the last thing you see about him.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just like, is that Alex Jones? And so it's Scanner Darkly. It's based on a Philip K. Dick novel, so it's going to be, or Philip K. Dick short story, so it's going to be weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should at some point check that out if you've got a couple hours to kill. I mean, it's Keanu Reeves, so don't expect a lot.
Okay.
But on the other side of the equation, it's got Robert Downey Jr. and Woody Harrelson in it.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So there's that. So I mean, it's got some decent names in it. But yeah, check it out. Yeah, because he was just like every time I think Alex Jones, them getting pulled into that blue van, and the door slamming shut, the van just taking off. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah,
his radio voice is too perfect too. That's another thing that makes me suspicious. It's too like Rush Limbaugh, just like spot on.
Yeah, he is quite good with the radio voice. Everything's very enunciated and very crisp and
and it has that deepness to it. Like
you want to carry. Yeah. It's Alex is an interesting individual, and the fact that he's. I mean, to be honest with you, I like Infowars on Facebook.
Yeah,
because I mean, there's just some stuff that rolls across, and you're just
well,
like,
and it's not all Alex Jones that does.
Yeah, a lot of the Infowars stuff is different people. Yeah, and I think that's a problem with Infowars is sometimes you'll get on there and you'll see something you're like, really, and you'll go check, and you're like, there's actually a lot of good evidence that that's going on, and then some of the stuff is just so far out there, and I think after a while people are like, well, no, he was right about this, so why wouldn't he be right about that?
Yeah.
And of course he has the documents.
Yeah. Well, Infowars actually picked up the story when did you know? Did I ever tell you about the YouTube channel when our YouTube channel got shut down and all that?
I think. Refresh me.
It was like about a year and a half. It was right before SHOT Show.
With the Google thing.
Yeah, and they shut us down and all that.
Yeah.
Infowars actually picked up the story.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they did not like on their like YouTube channel, but it was on their website.
Oh, okay. When Google said you were posting pictures of guns to Google Plus, and so they shut everything down.
Yeah, we were only down for like less than a day, and they and they picked it up. The Blaze picked it up.
I think that was right after that happened. I think right after I did my first podcast with you.
I think so.
Yeah, it was like the early part of last year. Yeah, because that was right. Because I did my first podcast with you guys in December. So yeah.
Yeah. Of course, Infowars and the Blaze. You know.
Yeah, those of all those that you wanted to. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the Blaze, especially that Tommy Lauren girl. I can't stand her. She's such a just pandering.
But that's the thing. Like that's the thing with all media at this point, man. It's all pandering.
It is.
Left wing, right wing. It's all pandering at this point.
It bothers me when you watch it and it's like people like her.
Yeah,
and I can see the way she's saying what she's saying, the things that she's saying, and just the way it's all structured. I'm just like, I can just imagine people soaking this up.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got a friend of mine that posts stuff from her all the time, and then I've got and I'm just like, why do you listen to this girl? Like, I don't even know that she believes half the stuff she's saying.
I don't think so. I think they just found someone that was really hot and articulate and angry, and they know that certain men are like, wow, this girl's she's beautiful and she's not afraid to tell it how it is. I want to listen to her.
Yeah, and the thing is, she's not telling it how it is 9 times out of 10.
No.
You just watch and you're like,
and she plays.
I'm pretty sure 90% of what you just said is completely inaccurate.
Yeah, and she did this whole thing that was, it was so patronizing about like, oh, men are just wimps nowadays and they're afraid to do this, and you can just hear all these people just being like, oh, by God, finally somebody's telling her how it is. I ain't one of these, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's never the guy that's listening. That's the wimp.
Right.
And you know what? I'm going to say it. If trying to be considerate of somebody else's feelings makes me a wimp, I'll take it. You know what I mean? Like there are things that I'll just look at people and go, no, that's ridiculous, and let me explain to you why.
Yeah.
But if trying to understand someone or think about how they feel or understand where they're coming from or any number of things makes me a wimp, or referring to somebody the way they want to be referred to makes me a wimp, then you know what? I'll take it.
And you know what? And there's lots of different ways to be a wimp or to be tough.
Yeah.
Like throwing out certain social norms might be like it's not manly to care about someone's feelings, but you could say that it's a tough thing to be able to care about how people feel about it, because you're throwing out that social stigma that's attached to it.
Well, I think it's more you're actually being an actual human being rather than this two-dimensional whatever that they think a man is supposed to be. And so, that's like, I read a story, and this might tick some people off. I don't know. I read a story a while back that this kid in the Marines, his drill instructor called him a retard. And he went on to basically try to explain to his drill instructor why that wasn't necessary. He was like, oh, so thin-skinned, and can't even, what is he going to do when he gets overseas? And at first I jumped on that bandwagon because there are some issues with some of the ways, and my fiance can attest to this. She's had people come. She's heard people from the FBI speak, and they're having some issues on different things. But honestly, if I think you're the kind of dude that can stand up to your drill instructor and be like, hey, whatever, man, but you don't have to use that kind of language.
Yeah.
I think there's a different level of toughness in that.
It's true,
because it wasn't that he was crying or upset. How could you call me that? It was
triggered.
It was more of the, hey man, like that's not a word that needs to be used. Like that's not necessarily that we can do a lot of, call me a worthless piece of, but you don't have to call me, we don't have to denigrate another group of people for you to make me feel, for you to tear me down psychologically. Why are you doing this to this other group of people? Yeah. And that was the point the kid was making. It wasn't that his drill instructor was being mean to him. It was like, hey, like we don't have to. There's an entire group of people over here that you're basically making fun of. There's no sense in that.
Yeah.
And to take that point and take that tone in boot camp and to bring that out, man, I think that takes a level of toughness, a lot tougher than just to stand there and take it. He called me. Who cares,
Right.
I think it's just a lot more than that,
Yeah. Another thing too is a lot of times when someone is challenging your toughness or your manhood or whatever, really they're trying to control you.
Yeah.
When they do that.
Yeah,
so there's a certain amount of toughness by being able to be like above that and to not care.
Act like a man. Well, what exactly does a man act like in your opinion? And is what a man acts like in your opinion and what a man acts like in my opinion the same thing? Because from where I'm standing, I am acting like a man, and you're acting like a 12-year-old boy who's trying to tick me off and get me to go off on you, and I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess maybe growing up with a mother who was in love with Spock, I think someone who's more in control of his emotions and can think rationally in a bad situation rather than flying off the handle like a barbaric idiot.
Yeah.
Might make you more of a man.
And you see it with and we need to probably stop, but you see it with the firearms trainers, because there's a lot of them. Mm-hmm. They're very competitive.
Yeah.
Especially the smaller schools. You have some that are just like so long established, like Thunder Ranch or Gunsight from where Jeff Cooper was, and all that. they don't do as much of this. But like some of the smaller ones, they like challenge you. They have this like big ego thing. Like, oh, if you're a real man, you'll come train and you'll learn how to like I have a different attitude towards self-defense where to me it's kind of like a balance of like how likely you are to need it. You know what I mean? Like I don't go out and do like a ton of pistol training, not because I necessarily think that it's bad or that it wouldn't make me more likely to survive a shooting. I just realized that the odds of that happening are so incredibly slim.
Yeah.
That just having a gun is being incredibly prepared.
Yeah.
For the situation. Not that I would be better than someone who trains. It's just kind of like it just feels like overkill for me. And I'm not.
No, I got
like we're all gonna die eventually. So I carry a gun because I want to have a choice if someone tries to attack me or I feel like I'm not a victim, like I can fight back. But it's less about like living as long as I can than it is about having a choice.
Yeah. Well, I mean that I take martial arts. I haven't been in a while, but when I took martial arts, I decided to take Aikido.
Yeah,
rather than
cool.
karate or kung fu.
Steven Seagal does that. Right?
Yeah, it's Steven Seagal stuff. But it's incredible. It's nothing but defense, because I'm not going out there trying to pick fights and prove I'm a man. Like if you mess with me and mine, I'm well trained enough that I can handle the situation, but I'm not going to be out there trying to provoke people, to prove I'm a man or whatever it means to be a man. I think I think that's something that gets changed.
Yeah.
Every generation.
Let's get tired of like the overdone ego macho thing when attached to all that kind of stuff. If you're actually in a fight, when it really comes down to it, you got to use all that stuff to your advantage.
My senseis at my dojo are some of the most humble people you will ever meet in your life.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And there's no way on this planet or any other that I would ever deign to get into an actual altercation with either one of them.
They could probably like pull your eyeballs out.
I'd probably be breathing out of my elbows. Like it's just not, but they're incredibly humble. They're incredibly sweet. They're just the nicest people. It's a married couple. And both of them are just very, very nice people. And like I said, incredibly humble and just good people through and through. To the point that the dojo's a nonprofit. Like they're just everything about them is just screams good people. But there's no way on earth that I would tangle with either one of them.
And you find that with people who are like really serious and can handle their business, they don't have a reason to be cocky about it. And I'm not like that. I it's not because I have all these great skills that I can be humble about it. I just don't care that much.
What's the point?
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like, people that are actually intelligent don't usually go around screaming how smart they are. Like, it's just, you just are a thing, and it's just a thing for to be that person. So,
yeah.
Well, I think we're coming up on I think we've hit everything.
I think we did.
Yeah, we hit, I mean, we hit flat Earth, we didn't talk about Hollow Earth. So 2 seconds, I'll take care of Hollow Earth for you. Ready? Okay, so first of all, gravity. We know gravity is a thing. Things don't just fall. Sorry, flat Earthers. So if gravity is a thing, Hollow Earth, the Earth would have to be much denser than it is now in order for us to stick to the outside of it. Gravity is usually seen as what's called a point origin, falls off at 1/r², which means that the farther away the radius, the less gravity you experience. So people standing on the inside of the Earth would actually be pulled towards its center. So if the hollow Earth goes this way, and you're standing on the inside of the hollow Earth, you would actually get pulled towards the center. So anybody living in the middle of the hollow, on the underside of the hollow Earth, would actually just be in a big ball about where the Earth's core is supposed to be. Tectonic plates, like we know, the surface of the Earth shifts.
Yeah.
So with the shifting of the surface of the Earth, you would have some, and it has to get recycled, because if it didn't, the plates would just split apart at some point, and you'd be able to see into the hollow Earth.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to have something on one side, new land being formed over here, while old land is popping off over here at the different tectonic joints, which couldn't happen if you had a hollow Earth. There would have to be some layer of magma or something between the two layers because of volcanoes. We know that they erupt from the mantle. So there's just and another thing, the Earth's magnetic field requires it to have a molten mantle and an iron core. So where does the magnetic field of the Earth come from if it's hollow? Unless they've got a huge magnetic field generator down there with them, and have had since the beginning of time immemorial. So yeah, hollow Earth's a lot easier to take care of than pretty much anything else, except for maybe flat Earth. But no, the Earth is a ball, and the core is more than likely made of iron and nickel, and then you've got the floating mantle which the plates float on.
Yeah, if there is any kind of hollow Earth, it's got to be some kind of extra dimensional space. Or something.
I mean, I guess technically maybe. I mean, there are some really huge caves. And there's the biggest cave I think they found in the world recently was in Vietnam, which is crazy because the cave's gargantuan. It's so big it has its own internal ecosystem. And I could see somebody going into a place like that,
That would be interesting to see.
I'd love to go see it. You can go online. There've been like drone flights through it. There's like forests in this cave.
Oh, I got to check that out.
Yeah,
that sounds
it's
amazing.
really cool. But I could see somebody going into something like that and being like, oh, wow, there's a whole world down here. And something like that beginning the hollow Earth concept.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as an entire like inside hollow Earth, like the Nazis thought, or a lot of the people back then, the Theosophy movements and things like that, I know there's just literally no way.
There is a story about the guy that flew to the North Pole, was it, or
South Pole?
South Pole, and he said that like there was some other kind of ship that came up out of the Earth, and
there was a whole thing with it. It was was it Halsey? Yeah, I mean, because
that didn't prove that the Earth is hollow, but it could maybe there's something living there or something.
Well, supposedly,
a good place to hide, the South Pole.
Apparently, supposedly at one point we sent a whole fleet down there, and they ended up getting into a fight with a bunch of things, which is another conspiracy theory that I kind of want to believe is true.
Yeah.
Whether I do or not, it's a different story, but I kind of want to. But yeah, I mean, the Antarctica. If you read any Lovecraft, there's stuff under the ice in Antarctica anyway. But that's one of the things. If there can be an upside, if global warming is a thing and there can be an upside to it, Antarctica thawing would be kind of cool because we finally get to see what's underneath all that ice.
Yeah.
But there could be different things in different times in the history of the Earth that could have led someone to believe in a hollow Earth, giant caves.
Yeah.
Interdimensional stuff, which in quantum mechanics we're starting to understand that passing between dimensions, at least communicating between dimensions, might not be once as impossible as we once thought. And now, if we can communicate, can we pass between them and all these other things? So yeah, I mean, it could be some interdimensional stuff that no one's ever thought about, wormholes and stargates and things like that could lead to the concept of a hollow Earth. But as far as an actual physical, the Earth is hollow.
Technically, I wouldn't make it hollow. It would just be
yeah. So I can't. No, I don't. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, the hollow Earth is just such an amazingly far-fetched concept that you just look at like 5 different things that we know happen on the planet and the way gravity works, and you're just like, nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that would happen, we'd have to have gravity, some sort of gravity generator in the crust of the Earth that pulled both the people inside and the people outside onto the Earth. And since we've never, drilled down with an oil well and hit a gravity generator, I'm going to assume that they're not there. Somebody finds one, let me know.
Yeah, there's no hollow Earth, people.
Yeah. Unless you find that gravity generator, and if you find a gravity generator, I want to know about it because that's what we need for good solid space travel too.
That's true. That would be nice, not to float around the whole time.
Exactly. So.
Well, thanks for stopping by, man.
No problem at all.
It's fun. We'll do it again soon.
Oh yeah. I think we need to do more of these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, we do. They're fun.
So much fun to do. Thanks for having me over.
Yeah,
as usual, man. I really appreciate it.
All right, I'm gonna go turn the live stream off now.
All right, sounds good. Can't wait to read the comments on this thing.